Howdy, howdy, everybody. Let's put this over here. Let's put that there. Let's put this up here, that there. Sorry, just making sure that everything's all set up. Oh, we don't need that. That can go right about there. Great. Howdy, howdy. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome, welcome. Glad the stickers are where people want them to be. You know, we'll add more as we need them. In the meantime, make sure to like, share, tap that screen, you know, all those normal things, so we can get some people to filter in. We did just start like 2 seconds ago, so give it a moment. Oh. Howdy. Hello, nucleotidal wave. That's a good name. Adding a background of space as if you know shit about astronomy. Oh, I know a lot about astronomy. Like tons about astronomy. Probably more than I should, considering I'm a physicist, not an astronomer. All right, well, we have our first guest. Sorry, let me pull up a notepad where I can write down some notes. Talk to David. David.
Yep.
How's it going, David?
Fine.
I'm glad to hear it. Do you believe in God, David?
Yes.
And which one would that be?
The Christian God.
Okay. What would you say is like the most convincing argument that you could perhaps give me, an atheist, that would, you know, make me more likely to believe in the God that you believe in?
Can I like ask you a question about your meta-ethical framework before I could give a argument?
Sure, I suppose.
Yes. Why are you an atheist, mainly?
You said this was going to be a question about meta-ethics?
About your like meta-ethical framework.
So why I'm atheist has nothing to do with meta-ethics. I'm atheist because it seems like the evidence that is the evidence and the arguments generally are not nearly as compelling for as they are against.
What would you define as evidence?
So there's logical evidence in the form of deductive reasoning or abductive reasoning. There's, you know, empirical evidence in the form of, you know, perhaps what you might call scientific or data-driven evidence. There's archaeological evidence, these kinds of things.
Okay, did you use the seriographic method when you come to this reasoning?
Sorry, the what method? The seriographic?
The seriographic method. The one that Socrates made.
I have no idea what word you're saying.
The seriographic method, the one that Socrates made.
Okay, I'm not familiar with it, so you'd have to familiarize me with it.
Okay.
Do you mean the Socratic method?
Yes.
Oh. Well, no, the Socratic method is a means of persuasion, perhaps, or a means of argumentation. It's not a means of forming beliefs or collecting evidence.
It can be used that way. It can be.
I mean, I think you'd struggle to still call it the Socratic method, but fine. So what is the argument that you want to present?
First, I would like need the sound argument for like evidence even being real.
You need the argument for evidence being real?
Yes.
I don't know what that means. Evidence is not like a proposition.
Um.
And look, if you're going to try to convince me, like I think that like evidence is a useful way of coming to belief, and I have like a notion of evidence that I generally accept. If you want to try to, you know, critique my worldview, you can do that, but critiquing my worldview is not just asking for an argument, right? Presumably you came on here with some sort of argument or some sort of reasoning to try to convince me. So you can either critique my worldview by offering an argument that shows my worldview is not tenable, or you can offer an argument in favor of your own worldview.
I can show you how I am critiquing your worldview because if you cannot give me a sound argument for like evidence being true in your worldview, that means that your worldview is not true, since it relies on the basis of I do not have enough evidence for God, therefore C, God is not real.
So look, it seems like you're confused. It seems like you want to run the transcendental argument for God, but I guess you want to avoid it. If you want to make an argument, you want to critique my worldview, that involves you presenting an argument, right? It's not just you asking a question.
Your worldview falls flat because you can't prove anything that's true about it, though.
Okay, can you present the argument for that claim then?
Yes. The argument is like, just like going to be, I reject your proposition that like, God is not real because I have no reason to like believe in it because in your framework and like in your worldview, you can't prove on how evidence is real.
Okay, I'm not asking you to accept my worldview. You came on here because, presumably you can read. It says, can you convince me to believe in your God? You don't have to accept my worldview. You can be a theist if you want. Presumably you came on because you want me to be a theist. So you should probably like offer an argument.
Your worldview is still inconsistent. It seems
Okay.
like you're dodging.
What's the argument for that?
I just told you why.
No, you told me why you're not convinced by the proposition. That has nothing to do with my worldview being
The reason
inconsistent.
why I told you why it's not true in my own worldview. It's because
I don't accept your worldview. You have to convince me that your worldview is true if you want to convince me to believe in your God.
It's because I reject it because you can't give me the sound argument.
That's great. You can reject it. I'm not asking you to accept it. You don't have to accept my worldview. Nobody's making you.
You can't prove your worldview to be true.
I'm not trying to convince you about my worldview. Presumably, you're trying to convince me about yours.
It's still...
Do you have an argument for your own worldview? Or is your worldview entirely just, well, you can't prove yours is true?
No. No. What I am doing is that I am picking apart your framework.
Okay, so what is my framework that you're picking apart?
And proving why it's not true because if your framework is not true, then what's the point of trying to pick apart mine?
I'm not trying to pick apart yours. I don't even know what yours is.
I told you what it is.
No, you didn't. I asked you if you believed in God. You said yes, and then you said, "Can I ask you a question?" I don't even know what you believe. I don't even know what God you believe in.
I said that I believed in the Christian God.
Okay, so you're a Christian. Okay, so what is the argument for the Christian God being real?
That doesn't make sense. You can't give an argument for the Christian God being real. You would have to make an argument for God being real.
Sorry, one more time?
You can't use an argument for the Christian God being real, since you would have to use an argument for like God being real, and then like you would have to prove all of the other Abrahamic religions false. That question is just absurd and stupid.
Well, so are you telling me that you can't convince me to believe in your God, that there are no arguments for it?
There is no argument for the Christian God being real. First, the step one, you would have to give an argument for God being real, and
Okay,
then
yeah, so give the argument for that. That'd be good.
and then you would have to prove all of the other Abrahamic religions false, like Islam and then Judaism.
Okay, yeah, sure. So why don't you start by giving the argument for God being real?
Why should I if your framework
Isn't that why you came
not
up?
true?
Isn't that is like the topic of the debate, right?
Why should I if your ontological framework is not true?
Well, that's a big claim, but presumably you read the background. The background says, can you convince me to believe in your God? And so I imagine that means that you came up with some sort of argument or some sort of reason why I should believe in your God.
Okay. So okay, so it says can you convince me to like believe in your God? What do you mean by believe?
Yeah, so accept the proposition as true, or accept the proposition with a high degree of confidence.
What do you mean in convince? By convince.
To change the credence that I have in the proposition from high credence that it's false to high credence that it's true.
Okay. The reason why I'm gonna just like reject that, it's because
Reject what? It's a definition.
I don't think that words are real. I can like give you the argument for that.
What?
So,
You don't think that words are real? What? I don't even know what that means. What do you asked me what a word means, so I just told you what I meant by it.
I am a physicalist. I think that everything is physical.
Okay, that's fine. You just asked me what I meant by those words.
Words are not real.
Okay, great. Words aren't real. So then why'd you ask me what I meant by them?
It's just a sheet of paper.
Okay, cool. Why'd you ask me what I meant by them then?
Okay, I'm like give you the argument for like words being not real.
Wait, hold on. To be clear, I'm happy to accept that words aren't real in whatever sense you mean. I just want to know, if you don't think that words are real, why did you ask me what I meant by the word believe? And why did you ask me what I meant by the word convince?
Because I like to see the definitions of people's worldviews, even if I think that it's false.
Okay. So, to be clear, you said you're a physicalist, right?
Yes.
Is God physical?
I would say yes.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so what's the argument for for a God existing?
Why should I give an argument for a God existing?
Well, because that's what the debate topic is.
The words that you put up on screen do not like exist, and I can give the argument for that.
I don't care about whether the words exist or not. I'm conveying meaning with the words, and your goal should be to understand that meaning and then come up, if you have a relevant thing to talk about, given the meaning of the words that are displayed around me.
I'm gonna just reject meaning.
Okay, you reject meaning. Great. So do you want to give an argument for why God exists or not?
What's the argument for meaning existing?
Do you want to give an argument for why God exists or not?
I mean, first, before I do that, I would have to hear the argument for meaning existing.
I don't think that you would. I think that a normal person wouldn't need that, actually.
I'm just rejecting meaning.
Okay. And I'm rejecting you. That was a weird conversation, but okay. What a wild way to start the day. All right, y'all, let's read some super chats and then we'll move on to the next guest. We have one super chat from Kung Pao Chicken. Thank you for the $20, Kung Pao Chicken. Kung Pao says, kick him. He's immature and not worthy of our time. He sounds mentally unstable. No, I don't think he was mentally unstable. I mean, he did seem immature, but I don't think he was mentally unstable. He just had a stutter or a speech impediment, and that's fine. You're allowed to have those. It's not, like, illegal to have a speech impediment. GG, how's it going?
Good, how are you doing? Can you hear me?
I am doing A-OK. Let me add you to the guest box on so everybody can hear you. Yeah, so GG, do you believe in God?
Yes, I do.
And which God would that be?
Jesus Christ.
All right.
Christian.
Now, what would you say is like the most compelling thing that you could tell me, you know, I'm an atheist, that would make me more willing to believe what you believe?
I would say without a God in general, maybe not even just well, I would say the Christian God, but without a God in general, I would say atheists, they don't have any justification for things like logic, truth claims, ethics, knowledge itself even. They can use these concepts, but there's no account for them. So I would say with Christianity, it explains why they exist in the first place. So that would be my general argument.
Yeah, so can you justify the claim that, like, you know, without Christianity that you can't justify these things?
Yeah, I would say like the 3 laws of logic, the law of identity, law of non-contradiction, the law of the excluded middle. These things are immaterial. So I would need an account from an atheist for why they exist, other than just atheists have faith that they exist.
Is that supposed to be an argument for the claim that you made, that atheists can't account for it?
That's part of it. Are you wanting to know why I would think the Christian God can't account for it?
No. I wanted to know why you think that atheists cannot account for it.
Because from my assumption, atheism kind of assumes its logical conclusion is we live in a purely material world.
Not necessarily. I mean, you can be like an atheist idealist, and then you would think that everything is mental. You can be an atheist Platonist, in which you think that there are abstract things and there are physical things, or you could be an atheist pure Platonist and think that everything is abstract.
So how do you account for things like logic and knowledge claims and truth claims and ethics and things like that?
I'm a nominalist, so I think that questions of account are probably mistaken. But I could be mistaken. It could be that nominalism is false and that Platonism is true. The question that you should answer, given the assertion that you made, is what is the justification for the claim that atheists cannot account for things like logic, ethics, truth, knowledge, etc.?
Why can atheists not account for them?
Yeah, because that was the claim you made, right?
Yes, I don't see any way they can.
But you understand that you saying, I don't see how they can, is not a really compelling argument?
So you said you account for them through like nominalism. And
so I'm a nominalist, so I think that questions about accounts of these things are probably ill-formed. But I could be wrong about that. I could be wrong about nominalism. That doesn't make your position true.
So does that mean you just like just accept that they exist without any kind of account?
I don't think that. So under my metaphysics, I don't think that things like laws of logic have like ontology. I think that these are concepts that humans constructed.
Okay, so if humans aren't
but that's
around,
neither here nor there. I could be wrong about that, and that doesn't mean that theism is true.
I think theism is the only thing that can account for them.
So how can you? So what's the argument for that? What's the argument for theism is the only thing that can account for things like logic?
I would say because there has to be a rational mind behind this like immaterial thing that is a structure to the universe itself. So I would say without any human minds around, the laws of logic, mathematics, truth, they still exist just because a human mind isn't there to perceive them. And if they don't, then there's no point in debate about anything. Not a single person can make a knowledge claim about anything. There'd be no point in even having conversations.
So just to be clear, you said that you think that logic and these things require a mind. Why should I believe that? They
require an eternal, rational mind.
Why should I believe that? Like, what's the argument?
The argument is you can't make a solid account for using these things.
So we're back to the first claim that atheists can't account for it, and that's why you need a mind to account for it, and you need a mind to account for it because atheists can't account for it. It just sounds like it's circular.
No, there's no foundation for them from an atheist world.
Okay, what's the argument for that? Like you keep kind of just reasserting the conclusion that you're trying to come to.
atheism's logical conclusion is just pure materialism.
That doesn't follow. I gave you examples of kinds of atheism that are not materialist.
Yeah, they don't make any kind of logical sense. How could there not be?
Are you familiar with all of the different kinds of atheism that there are? Because keep in mind, atheism is not a complete theory of metaphysics. It is one particular position that is included in a much larger metaphysic, right? So you can have like idealists, you can have naturalists, Platonists, you can have all sorts of these different kinds of metaphysical, positions, and atheism can fit into some of them and can't fit into others. So is the claim that you're making that like every single metaphysics that can possibly include atheism doesn't make any sense?
Yes, I would say that atheism can't.
How are you going to justify that?
By atheist claim, how can there be anything if there's no God or source or creator to the universe? Then any sort of immaterial claim they make is incoherent. How
does that follow? Like, suppose that you're a mathematical Platonist. I have a friend who's a mathematical Platonist. What is it? A full-blooded mathematical Platonist, if you will. They think that the only things that exist are abstracts.
Yeah, how I would just wonder how they. So you're saying they would essentially say the only things that exist are like logic, math, and.
Yep.
I just would like to know how they account for that. How is that different than having faith in a God?
I don't know what you mean. How is it different than having faith in a God? I mean, like, look, it's not a position I hold, so I'm not. It's not a position I hold, so I'm not going to like present a.
Yeah, I'm not saying
like
you do. I'm not saying you do.
A straw man argument for it or something like this. But
no,
these are positions, and so these are positions that people hold. So I don't know how you come to the conclusion that by definition being an atheist means that you're a materialist, and so you can't account for non-material things. Like, there are atheists who are idealists, which means that they think that everything is mental, right? Like, it just doesn't follow that that atheists are only materialists.
I would just say that's a very incoherent it doesn't line up with atheists like ultimate claims about the universe, because essentially there's no difference between having faith in those things as having faith in God. They're just asserting that they exist. So,
well, no, really, I mean, like, they have, like, they'll have deductive arguments for why they exist. It doesn't require faith or anything like that.
Like what?
I'm not going to make the arguments for things that I don't believe in, but like I've heard arguments from these are from atheists who think that there is only mind, and these come from things like, the only things that we have direct experience of are mind, and all of the experiences that we have about material objects are filtered through a mind, so we have no actual evidence that the material exists, and we only have evidence that the mind exists. We have direct experiential evidence that the mind exists, so no faith is required there. That's one way that you can get to idealism and still be an atheist. You can get to mathematical Platonism by just saying, look, if numbers possibly exist, then they necessarily exist. Numbers do possibly exist, therefore numbers necessarily exist. So you don't need any sort of faith to come to the conclusion that material or that numbers exist, for example, and then you can build mathematical Platonism or full-blooded mathematical Platonism off of that. It just doesn't follow that there's some faith requirement, and perhaps suppose for a moment that it does follow that some particular atheist metaphysics requires faith. How does that mean that it's incoherent?
They can't justify these things. I mean, where are they getting the justification that they just exist?
If you want to make the claim that they can't justify these things, you have to make the argument that they can't. It's not enough to just say, oh yeah, well, I don't think they can, therefore they can't. You have to make the argument, because there's an infinite number of possible atheist metaphysics that you've never thought of. So how are you going to make the argument that there's no possible way that an atheist could justify things like logic or something like this when you don't even know about all of the atheist positions?
Do you think those atheist positions are coherent or incoherent, or are they compatible with?
They're absolutely coherent. I'm just not necessarily convinced by them.
Why aren't you convinced by them?
Because I think that I take a more nominalist view. I take a more anti-realist view towards a lot of these things.
Okay, so you would generally say they don't exist?
What don't exist?
I'm asking. So are you saying like logic doesn't actually exist?
I don't think it has ontology. No.
Okay, but you use it, right?
Yeah, I think it's like in the same way that I don't think like the number 6 exists, but like 6 is still a useful concept.
So that is completely incoherent to me. I don't see
Okay,
how
what's the
you could use
incoherency?
something you claim doesn't exist.
What's the incoherency here?
You just claimed that logic and math and numbers have no, they don't exist. I would agree they don't have an ontology. They are human concepts, but
Yeah,
the foundation.
I mean,
of
insofar as
atheism-
like concepts point to like, insofar as concepts exist, they exist, but I don't think that they exist like absent human minds, or absent, you know, minds in general. Maybe there's aliens.
So if all humans don't exist anymore, the laws of logic and mathematics no longer exist.
Well, you would have to also get rid of all of the aliens that might be thinking about that kind of stuff
And
too.
aliens,
but yeah,
any kind of sentient, intelligent creature,
sure.
they don't exist.
Absolutely. But look,
So what's the point in having
Gigi,
conversations at all about any of this stuff?
I don't
they
understand
don't
how
exist,
I don't
I
understand
just
how the
don't
question
see-
is related to what we just talked about.
Because logic, like, presupposes, or debate presupposes logic. In order to have coherent debate.
Yeah, I agree.
have
Debate
to
presupposes
accept these
logic.
things
You and
as,
I
like,
both have minds, so we can both use logic. Minds exist, so we can use logic.
What is a mind?
It's something that I directly experience, and presumably you do too.
A mind is something we directly experience.
That's not a description of a mind. It's just it's just a property that a mind has, or a property that you and I have with respect to minds. Minds are famously really, really hard to define. But look, if the claim is that, you know, no atheist position can account for these things like logic, it's not enough for you to just say, oh, well, while you're talking to me, it's not enough for you to say, oh, well, your view is incoherent, because my view isn't the only atheist position. You would have to debunk literally every single atheist position held or not held by every atheist in the world. So, I mean, that's the burden that you have right now if you're trying to make this claim.
But my claim is if logic doesn't exist, absent of human minds, then there is no coherency to anything or any conversation.
So Gigi,
debate at all.
the lovely part is that it doesn't matter whether or not my worldview is true. In order for you to make a case for the argument or for the claim that you made, you have to debunk not only my worldview, but literally every single worldview that is consistent with atheism. You made the claim that no atheists can account for logic. So even if I'm wrong, even if my particular version of atheism is incorrect, that doesn't say anything about whether your claim is true. Your claim is about all atheists or all worldviews consistent with atheism. So you need to prove this about every single possible atheistic worldview. You understand the burden in front of you, right?
I understand what you're saying, but I would say that these different flavors of atheism we're talking about, like Platonism and all this stuff, they're not not a single one can justify logic.
Okay, prove it then. Then prove that no single brand of atheism or no single variety of atheism can justify these things. What's the evidence for that?
What's the
argument?
Because atheism assumes a material world, whether there's
it literally doesn't. We've been over this. It doesn't assume a material world. There are idealists
just
who are
because
atheists.
Atheists can say it doesn't mean that they are correct.
Okay, so what's the argument for atheism entailing a material world then?
The argument would be that if there is, so atheism is the claim that no God exists.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I would say that would mean, does that include anything supernatural, anything spiritual in any kind of realm like that?
Nope.
So just a God.
Yep.
So you can be an atheist and believe in, like, let's say, the Force, for example. We'll just
you could be an atheist and believe in ghosts. You can be an atheist and believe in an afterlife.
Okay, well, but how would they account for those things?
You'd have to ask them.
Would you say they could or couldn't, from your perspective?
Well, I don't think that those things are real, but they might, and they will likely have arguments for it. So, look.
Will those arguments be coherent in any way?
Probably.
You think an atheist can make a coherent argument for the existence of ghosts?
Yeah, probably. You might not accept the premises of the argument, but that doesn't mean that of the worldview, but that doesn't mean that the worldview isn't coherent.
So would you say that when somebody makes the argument for the existence of God, that they can make a coherent argument for that?
Absolutely. It just the premises might not be well defended.
I would say that they are defended. I mean, like,
okay, so then present the argument that's both coherent, or I guess we should probably use the phrase valid, and has sound premises.
Because my argument would be that things like logic, ethics, truth claims, knowledge itself can only exist if there is a rational mind behind the universe we live in. Otherwise, these things are just
yeah, I know. So what's the argument for that?
Hold on. I'm almost done. Either these things don't exist, which I would assume would render all conversation, argument, and debate just invalid and pointless. Because if human minds don't exist, and then that would make these things not exist, we can't. Then there's no point to debate, because like logic is just assumed and it doesn't actually exist.
So I just want to remind you again, you said your argument is that atheists can't account for logic. And that's where we started. I'm asking you for the argument for that claim.
Use it. I'm sorry?
That was where you started. I'm asking you for the argument of that claim. If you like, I don't think that just saying it again will be more convincing the fifth time.
Yeah, because atheism assumes a purely material world. That's my argument.
Do you think that saying that for a fourth time will make it more true? Because you keep saying atheism assumes material world when it absolutely doesn't.
You're not
atheism
really
is a single position. Atheism is a single position on a single proposition.
Okay, but your rebuttal is just that some atheists don't think that.
Yes,
that's not a real rebuttal.
And so if the claim is that atheism,
who cares what they think? Like,
that's it. They're still atheists. Your claim is that atheists are necessarily they are required to be materialists, and that's not true. There are atheists who are not materialists.
Yeah, and that's
a counterexample to your
logical
claim.
Conclusion.
Okay, prove that it's incoherent. Prove it's incoherent. Oh, wait.
Because the logical... Okay, you got to let me finish, though. The logical conclusion of atheism is that we live in a purely material world. So if an atheist
That's the assertion again. How do you prove that?
Okay,
Okay, we're going to get out a notepad. Just to keep you linear, we're going to get out a notepad, and we're going to write down the argument that you were trying to make here. Is that fair?
Sure.
Be super, super linear.
Okay.
Oops.
It assumes a purely material world. So an atheist that would say,
what's the first premise of the argument? So we know that we want the conclusion to be something like, let me make this bigger. We know that we want the conclusion to be atheism implies materialism, something like that, right? That's the conclusion of your argument. Now, what's the first premise?
The first premise of that argument?
Yeah, that has that as its conclusion.
I would say the first premise, hold on, give me 1 second, think about this. A good way to put this. Without a, hold on. Well, I can't come up with a syllogism for you right now, but just hear me out. Like,
so we'll just write down your argument then. So what's the argument? So so the claim is, you want to say that
a purely materialistic world.
Atheism assumes a purely materialistic world. Okay.
So let me give an example.
And then what's the justification for that?
That atheism. Okay, so an atheist. I'm not going to give you the justification just yet, but I want to give you an example of something I've been trying to say for the past 5 minutes. So an atheist that would say, "Well, I don't believe in God, but I believe in ghosts." Well, that's no different than a claim a religious person would make. There's no evidence.
Sure. Okay, that might be fine.
So that would not be an atheist to me. That would be like somebody that's just.
Okay, so you're no true Scotsmaning atheists then. Atheists can believe whatever they want, like as long as they don't believe in God, they're an atheist. That's just what the word means.
And let's define God. How would you define God?
We could use a Western definition where it's something like a being with a mind that exists outside of physical reality and is perhaps responsible for creating or grounding physical reality.
Okay, yes, and transcendental and responsible for making things like the laws of logic, mathematics.
Doesn't have to do that. I mean, like, you could include that in your definition if you want to, but I think that probably a more bare definition is probably more applicable. And then it could have extra features too. It could be good, for example, but it doesn't have to be good to be a god, right?
All right.
In the broadest sense of the word.
Fair enough.
So what's the justification for the claim atheism assumes a purely materialistic world? What's the justification for that?
There would be no ground. So there would be no grounding or foundation or justification to assume anything else, like ghosts, unicorns, fairies. There
is
anything like that.
So you're saying under atheism, there is no grounding to justify unicorns, fairies, ghosts, or anything.
Or anything supernatural.
Supernatural. Okay. Premise 2.
Therefore, atheism assumes a purely material world.
Okay, so premise 1, conclusion. So under atheism, there's no grounding to justify unicorns, fairies, ghosts, or anything supernatural. Okay. Why should I believe premise 1 is true?
Why should you believe premise 1 is true? Because how could you say, I don't believe in God, but I believe in unicorns? How is that logical?
Well, maybe they believe in unicorns, but they don't believe in God.
Well, there's more evidence for God than there is for unicorns.
There's maybe to you, to the people who believe in unicorns and don't believe in God, they would disagree. They would say that there's more evidence for unicorns than there is for God.
Yeah, they could disagree, but that doesn't, just disagreeing is no different than what you're saying I'm doing.
So look, if you're making this claim that there is no grounding to justify these beliefs, then you have to justify that. You have to justify the claim that you're making.
I am. Okay, I'm about to, because unicorns do not, they're not a coherent justification for things like logic, knowledge, ethics, truth claims. The God of the Bible, however, claims to be eternal, morally perfect, unchanging, a creator. He qualifies for all of these things. And a God in general would qualify for those things. So the argument that, well, some atheists can believe in ghosts and fairies and they're still atheists, I don't even see the point in bringing that up. Like, what, that doesn't have to do with anything.
You made a claim that atheism assumes a purely materialistic world, but there are atheists that don't do that. Therefore, it's not the case that atheism directly implies a materialistic world. As long as you think that it's possible to be rational, do you think it's possible to be rational and be atheist?
Yes.
Okay, so if it's possible, do you think it's possible to be rational and be, say, atheist and Buddhist?
Yes.
Okay, so Buddhism is a very complicated tradition, right? But there are versions of Buddhism that have reincarnation and are also atheist. Would you say that reincarnation is supernatural?
Yes.
Okay, so you're saying that it's possible to be both atheist and believe in something supernatural and be rational. So you've just completely dismantled your entire claim here. If you are a Buddhist, if you're an atheist Buddhist, and you believe in reincarnation, then you do not assume a purely materialistic world.
Well, I wasn't, when you said rational, I wasn't thinking like in terms of, I was thinking in terms of like, can they be a rational human being in general? Like, but is there a logical consistency to any of that? No, I would say.
Okay, so what's the contradiction there?
The contradiction between being an atheist and not believing in reincarnation, or believing in reincarnation?
Being an atheist and believing in reincarnation. What's the contradiction there?
The contradiction, well, there's not necessarily a contradiction with that, but my main argument
if it's not a contradiction, then it's possible to be an atheist and believe in reincarnation and to not hold an incoherent worldview. It is possible for an atheist to believe in reincarnation and hold a coherent worldview, and that is strictly non-materialistic, which means that your conclusion that atheism implies materialism is false.
I guess in that sense, that would be one branch of atheism that, can assume immaterial things. But I guess I was arguing more from like the perspective of an atheist who is trying to use things like logic to make their argument for that there's no God, that they are borrowing things that they can't account for.
But there's the claim again, and that's the 6th time you've said it.
Okay, so
what's the argument for saying that atheists can't account for logic?
Well, I'm asking you, how do you account for the laws of logic?
That's not an argument. I'm sorry, I'm not going to let you shift the burden.
I can't ask you, so you're not going to answer questions? I have to answer all the questions?
I'm happy to answer questions if you're asking me about my own worldview and not trying to defend a claim that you're making.
All right.
But right now, you just made a giant, enormous claim that atheists cannot ground logic, cannot justify the existence of logic. And so you need to justify that claim. And it's not enough to just ask me questions. Like, if you're making an argument, you should be able to make that argument in an empty room. It shouldn't require talking to somebody else. You should be able to write that argument down on a sheet of paper, and it will either be valid or it won't be valid. So present the argument as if you were writing it down on a sheet of paper. You can't ask anybody questions while making an argument, because that's not an argument. Those are questions.
So you're not going to answer how you justify the laws of logic.
So, and to be clear, I've already been over what my metaphysic is about, like what kinds of things logic are. And so I think that that's just like a mistake, like a question that has mistakes in it. Like it has some inbuilt assumptions that I think are false. But setting that aside, even if I held some other worldview, you need to justify the claim. It's not enough for you to just say that I can't justify it. You need to justify the claim that atheists in general cannot justify it.
My justification would be that you can't answer the question.
That's not a justification for a claim. Look, okay, so if
you're an atheist and you're not making any kind of like argument that you can use logic.
Okay, so suppose look, Gigi, suppose I'm like the dumbest bag of rocks in the world.
I don't.
And let's pretend that I'm a Christian and I'm like the dumbest bag of rocks in the world. And then an atheist comes up to me and they say, "Oh, well, Christianity is atheism is true because, you know, theists can't justify, or theists can't make sense of evolution." And then the atheist goes on to say, "Oh, well," they say to me, "Oh, well, can you explain what evolution is? But I'm really dumb, so I can't explain what evolution is." Would the atheist then be justified in saying, "Aha, theists can't explain what evolution is, therefore Christianity is false"? Like, that's what you're doing right now. What you're doing is you're demanding that I give some sort of account in order to prove a claim about all atheists. About all atheist worldviews.
Yes, about just you. Like, I just want to know how you...
Okay, so your argument is not that atheism cannot justify logic then? It's merely that Blitz's atheism cannot justify logic?
Well, I don't think atheists can, but I'm just curious how you justify logic.
Are you curious, or are you trying to use this to defend an argument that you're making?
Maybe both.
Because so the claim that you're making, again, is, and we'll put it up, the claim that you're making is atheists cannot justify logic. And the way that you're trying to defend that claim,
but not just logic.
Can you justify logic?
Not just logic. They can't justify.
Well, yeah. So like we could, like, you know, logic and ethics and truth and knowledge and all of these things. Like
all those things. Yeah.
Like you understand that this claim is not defended by let's say that my answer is no. So let's suppose that I can't justify logic. You understand how that doesn't help prove your claim?
I think it does, because
your claim is that atheists cannot justify logic. My claim is, let's work out a hypothetical here. Hypothetical, right? So we have Gigi. Atheists can't justify logic. Blitz then says, "Oh, what's the evidence for that claim?" Totally reasonable question. Gigi says, "Well, can you justify logic?" Blitz then says, "No, I can't." And then what does Gigi say? Aha, therefore all atheists can't justify logic? Is that what happens? Is that how you see this playing out?
No, no. My response would be, well, since you can't, I was just curious if you can. If you
suppose
you can.
I can't. Suppose I can't.
Suppose you
then
can.
What? Suppose I cannot. Then what?
Then I would say that you're the point, like debating or having argument at all is pointless from your worldview.
I don't see how that follows.
Because logic, debate assumes
let's say I just grant logic is just brutally true. That logic just exists, it's true, just as a feature of the universe, requires no explanation. It isn't something that can be explained even in principle. It's just something that's true. What if I just accept that that's the case?
I would say that's a faith claim.
Okay, suppose it is. Then what?
Then your worldview is no different than a religious person's.
Well, no, I mean, my worldview doesn't include God, and a religious person's probably would.
But it assumes an immaterial thing exists.
Okay,
that you
sure.
can't prove.
Sure. Okay, then what? How do you get me to believing that God exists?
Well, I can't necessarily get you to believe in God exists, but I could say that God, as a foundation, makes all these things make sense. Makes logic make sense, math makes sense, truth claims can make sense, ethics can make sense.
Okay, great. You're providing a possible foundation. Why should I care? If I already accept that logic is just a brute fact of the universe, then it seems like I wouldn't need a foundation.
You would, because you can just accept that, but you can't justify it.
If I think that it's a brute fact, then it doesn't require justification. That's like one of the three horns of the Agrippa trilemma. But look, my point is your claim merely that is your claim merely that someone should believe in God because perhaps God can ground these things?
No, I'm not saying someone should believe in God. I'm saying the only way to make these things to justify the existence of these things is some sort of supernatural.
But there's the claim again. So we've now shifted. We've now shifted to Gigi. The only way to justify or ground logic, etc., is with God. And so then Blitz says, what's the evidence / justification for that claim? And then Gigi, what do you say?
That it makes the worldview coherent. So the only way to
makes the worldview coherent. But hold on. So I might agree with you that, you know, and we could, you know, for the sake of argument, I will grant you that the worldview you hold is coherent and that the worldview can justify or ground logic and all of these other things. How does that mean that God is the only way to do that?
Well, you could substitute God for another word too. I mean, like God could be like just a rational mind behind the universe.
So how does right? I mean, that's what we mean by God. How do you know that the only way to justify or ground these things is through a rational mind that kind of governs the universe?
Well, I'm not going to ultimately know that, but as far as human knowledge goes, that's the only foundation that can make it make sense so far.
Okay, so how do you justify that? How do you justify that it's the only one that makes sense?
How do I justify that it's the only one that makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the God would have to be, it would have to have certain traits and certain features.
No, how can you justify that the only way it makes sense is to have a God, period?
Because if there's no, the world would just be completely chaotic and material without it. I mean, I don't see how.
A, I don't think that follows. But B, the question is how could you justify that the only way, or how could you, you know, provide evidence for the claim that the only way to justify or ground logic and truth and knowledge and all these things is through God and not through some other mechanism?
Because there would have to be a rational mind, a creator that
Why?
How else could you do it?
Asking how else is not a justification. That's incredulity.
Well, all things ultimately are going to be circular at the end of the day, but it's just
I don't think that's true.
Makes the best. You don't think so?
No, I think if you have I think if your arguments are circular, then I don't think that you have arguments at all.
Well, how is logic just existing?
Here, let me give you a circular argument that you will find very dissatisfying. So God doesn't exist because logic proves that God doesn't exist. Logic proves that God doesn't exist because God doesn't exist. That's circular. It's circular and it's coherent. But surely you wouldn't accept that makes it true or reasonable.
Say that one more time.
Yeah, logic proves God doesn't exist. because God doesn't exist, and God doesn't exist because logic proves God doesn't exist. So here we'll do it this way. So A, logic proves God doesn't exist. B, God doesn't exist. A is true because B is true. B is true because A is true.
How does logic prove God doesn't exist? Is what I would
Because
ask.
God doesn't exist.
So that's just a circular argument.
Yeah. And you don't like, and so you don't like circular arguments, do you? You don't think that they're good.
I mean, I think on some level I don't, but I think ultimately at the end of the day, everybody's arguments are going to be circular when you get right down to the complete.
Okay, so are we agreeing that circular arguments are reasonable then?
Not all circular arguments are reasonable.
How do you tell the difference between circular arguments that are reasonable and circular arguments that are not reasonable?
Some arguments, how do you tell the difference? Okay. So like, that's a good question. How do you tell? I would say the ones that are reasonable. Okay, so it's not like reasonable and unreasonable. I feel like it's a false dichotomy between it. I would say at the foundation of everybody's belief, it will ultimately become circular, but the unreasonable ones, for lack of a better term, will be more at like the surface, if you can get what I'm saying.
Okay, so if I did so let's bury this a little bit deeper. So we have logic proves God doesn't exist. And then we have that God existing. Let's do this properly. Or how about this? We'll do it this way. If God doesn't exist, or if logic exists, God. No, we'll do it this way. God doesn't. If God doesn't exist, then logic. Then logic exists. B. If logic exists, then math exists. C. If math exists, then then we can make sense of clocks. D. If we can make sense of clocks, then we can have 9-to-5 jobs. E. If we can have 9-to-5 jobs, then we can have horrifying existential dread about
I agree with all this.
The end of time. F. If we can have horrifying existential dread about the end of time, then God doesn't exist. So now we have a more involved circle, right? So if God doesn't exist, then logic exists. If logic exists, then math exists. If math exists, then we can make sense of clocks. If we can make sense of clocks, then we can have 9-to-5 jobs. If we can have 9-to-5 jobs, then we can have horrifying existential dread about the end of time. If we can have horrifying existential dread about the end of time, then God doesn't exist. And so, great. This is a completely coherent set of propositions. They all agree with each other. And so if God doesn't exist, then all these things follow, and God not existing follows from having a horrifying existential dread about the end of time, and so on. I could just make this so much longer. Would that make it more likely to be true?
No. I mean, I agree.
So burying the circularity in depth doesn't make the circle any better.
Burying the circle in depth doesn't make it any better.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we've gotten way off track with all of this.
I agree.
Like my main point is that atheists have no justification for the laws of logic.
I know that's your main point. That's the 7th time you've said it without justifying it.
And I would say the proof is that I can't have a coherent answer for their justification at all. Atheists are just kind of asserting they exist without.
I mean, I can offer an argument that a friend makes. Let me offer an argument that a friend makes. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I'm not going to let you move the goalpost. If the claim is merely that atheists can't justify this, and your evidence for the claim is that, they haven't yet, that's not evidence that the claim is true. That's not proof that the claim is true.
It's not that they haven't yet. It's not that they haven't yet. It's that there's no that they can't, from my perspective.
Okay, so Gigi, let me ask you this: how much philosophy have you read?
I would say a very basic amount. I've
What
read
is-
probably the surface level.
What's the most recent philosopher that you've read?
I would say David Hume.
Okay, and how long ago did you read it?
Probably a year ago.
And when I said most recent, I meant like, I didn't mean like the most recently alive. Have you read any philosophers from this century?
I don't. No, I mean,
Okay,
I'm
so then
not,
how
like,
can you make the claim? How can you reasonably make the claim that like atheists can't justify this if you're not even familiar with like the philosophical literature?
So is that not an appeal to authority fallacy?
It's not an appeal to an authority. You're making the claim that, oh, well, you know, you've never seen an atheist do this. You haven't looked.
I mean, I have. I don't think there.
No, you haven't. You haven't read any philosophers from this century.
I've listened to them. I don't need to read their books. You can go and listen.
Which philosophers have you listened to?
I don't know, man.
I thought you listened to them.
Well, I don't know who you consider a philosopher and who you don't.
Somebody who has a PhD in philosophy.
Well, I don't know if they have a PhD in philosophy. I mean, like, I'm probably going off of like the general atheists off of the internet, like YouTube. Like maybe you, Alex O'Connor, Sam Harris, people like that.
Okay, so none of these people are philosophers.
Okay, yeah, they're not philosophers.
So how are you going to make the claim that atheists that atheists cannot justify these things when you haven't even looked into what the atheists are thinking, like what the actual, like, you know, academics are doing? You haven't even looked into the plausible arguments.
I would say they can attempt to, but it's still.
You don't even know. You've never even considered these arguments that they've thought. Can you give me one example of an argument that you've heard an atheist make to justify, like a professional, not a professional atheist, like a philosopher make to justify logic in an atheistic worldview? Can you give me one example of such an argument and why you think it's bad?
Let me think. No, I can't.
So then how can you make the claim that, like, oh, well, they never have. They've never offered a coherent justification of logic. Like, what are you doing?
I never said they never have or they never tried.
You said that they can't. But you
I don't think they I don't think they can. I mean, like,
on what grounds do you hold that view?
On what grounds do I hold the view that they can't? Just they haven't made any kind of I don't know, man. I mean, like, I don't think you have to read every single philosopher before you make any sort of claims about anything. That's
you absolutely don't. However, if you're going to make the view that there is no atheist position that can do this, you better be familiar with more than just YouTube atheist apologetics. Because there's a lot more than just that.
I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is a lot more than just that, but I don't think that it's required to go through the entire plethora of.
If you're making a claim about all atheist positions, yeah, it is required. Or alternatively, you have to have a positive support for the claim that you can show that that it's impossible for an atheist to have such a worldview. You could do that too, and then you wouldn't have to read all of the atheists. But if your claim is merely, oh, well, you know, the atheists don't have a good argument, then you better be knowledgeable about what the arguments the atheists are making.
So give me an argument. So since
I'm sorry, I'm not doing that. You've already shown your ignorance on this topic, and now you're asking me to do the homework for you?
No, I'm just asking if you can give me one example of one so that I can maybe give you my argument against it, like, live here now.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you an argument from
some. Yeah, you don't have to. I was just asking.
It's just not going to happen, because it's clear that you're making this argument that atheists cannot give an argument for the justification of logic or whatever. You're making that in bad faith, because you don't actually know what the atheist arguments are. The only atheist arguments you've heard are from, like, Alex O'Connor and, like, what's his name, the bald guy on from the Atheist Experience, like those are the extent of the arguments. You're not even familiar with the atheistic literature on, like, metalogic and metaethics and like metaphysics in general. Like, you're not even familiar with that. So how can you
think those guys,
Matt Dillahunty, thank you.
Yeah. Do you think like Alex O'Connor and Matt Dillahunty are bad spokesperson for the atheist position, I guess?
It broadly no, but about specific claims, perhaps. I don't know if they've ever talked about these things, so I don't watch either of them regularly.
I would say Alex probably talks about them more than Matt. Matt usually
I don't know if Alex has ever talked about like the question of like foundations of logic and things like this. But like, for example, imagine how absurd it would be if I said, oh, well, you know, theists can't account for causation in a non-physical sense, or theists can't account for non-temporal causation. And then yeah, so actually, why don't we just do this? We'll just turn the argument kind of on its side. So suppose I gave an argument for God's non-existence, saying that if God existed, then God must have caused the universe to exist in a non-temporal sense. Yeah, in fact, we'll even just we're just going to do a parody of the argument that you're using. So premise 1, if God existed, then theists should be able to account for causation of the universe in a non-temporal sense. Premise 2, theists cannot account for the causation of the universe in a non-temporal sense. Conclusion, God does not exist. Do you have a problem with this argument?
If God existed, then theists should be able to account for causation of the universe in a non-temporal sense. Theists cannot account for causation of the universe in a no, I don't necessarily have a problem with that argument.
Which premise do you disagree with?
I'm not even sure I disagree. I don't think that's a bad argument.
If you disagree with neither premise, then that means that you must agree with the conclusion.
No, not necessarily.
Yes, it does. This is modus tollens. This is a logically valid form of reasoning, and if the two premises are true, then the conclusion follows.
Well, I guess I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like my main point was that I asked you if you could justify the laws of logic, and you said you couldn't. You said no.
I think it's a category error, to be clear. But look, so and
you said it's a brute fact.
By the way, that's not the view I hold. I said that in principle, like somebody could hold that. Like if I was dumb and that was the view I held, then like that doesn't mean me being dumb doesn't mean that your argument is true. But look, so and we should really like. I didn't mean to focus on this. This was supposed to be like an illustrative example. But the fact that so you think that both of these premises are true?
No, I don't. But
which premise do you think is not true?
Maybe you can't account for causation of the universe.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's exactly the right premise that you should reject. Because this is a wild claim. So if I said theists cannot account for the causation of the universe in a non-temporal sense, and if I just said that to you, and I said, okay, well, can you account for it?
Can I account for it? Yeah, I guess.
Okay, so what's your account for it?
My account for the universe in a non-temporal sense. And how do you so you're probably gonna think, oh wow, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Define non-temporal real quick for me.
Yeah, so we typically understand causation in like a temporal sense, like if A causes B, then A is before B, like it took place at an earlier time, or perhaps it took place at the same time.
So, in English, but like, what would that mean, like in a lay person's terms?
So temporal causation is when the cause is before or simultaneous to the effect.
Okay, so if God exists, then theists should be able to account for causation of the universe, like causation being like creation of the universe.
Yeah, that's one way to cause something, to create it.
Okay, in a non-temporal sense, meaning before.
Yeah, because if the universe didn't exist, then time didn't exist, right? Like if God created time, then there couldn't have been time before time.
I guess, yeah, we wouldn't be able to fully know that, but sure. So I would say the theist should be able to account for the causation of the universe in a non-temporal sense. I don't know, man. I'm not really sure how to actually respond to that. I'm gonna be honest.
So the correct response, and by the way, this is a valid argument. It's not a sound argument, or at least it's not. At least it would require a lot of justification, because the first premise says, why does God existing mean that theists should be able to come up with some sort of explanation? Why just because God exists, that doesn't mean theists are able to understand how that works. Second, just because theists can't account for something doesn't mean that there isn't an account for that thing, right?
Okay, I got you.
So neither premise is really sound, at least, or neither premise is really true. But the point is this is an exact replica of the argument that you make. You make the premise.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, because atheists can't account for logic, so it's kind of a similar.
It's the exact same argument. Just swap out. If God doesn't exist, then atheists should be able to account for, let's say, logic, and then you say atheists cannot account for logic, therefore God does exist. Like it's the exact same argument.
Well, no, my conclusion wouldn't be that God does exist. My conclusion would be that atheists, because that's not what I'm saying isn't proving God exists. I mean, ultimately, people can't prove a God exists. I'm gonna grant that's not a.
Is this your first argument? Your first premise is if God doesn't exist, meaning if the atheist position is true, that's what it means for God to not exist, then atheists should be able to account for logic, right?
Yes.
And then your second claim is that atheists cannot account for logic. And so the only way to make this a logically valid syllogism is for the conclusion to be God does exist.
Could you not do if God possibly doesn't exist, then atheists should be able to account for logic, and the conclusion would be then God may exist?
No, I don't think that follows. So the negation of God possibly not existing is, I guess is either necessary or possibly exists. Yeah, what's the negation of the possibility operator? If something is not possible, or if something possibly exists and it exists in at least one world, if it's possible that God doesn't exist, then that means that it could be the case that no possible world contains God.
Because my ultimate argument is not that God does absolutely exist. I mean, nobody can actually.
If you say if God possibly doesn't exist, then the conclusion is God necessarily exists, by the way. The negation of possibly doesn't exist is necessarily exists.
Okay. Or something like God necessarily exists.
But the point is that you understand that both of these premises are bad premises. Because whether or not God exists, that says nothing about what atheists should or should not be able to account for. Atheists might be dumb, in which case they can't account for it. That doesn't mean that there's no account. Similarly, atheists not being able to account for something just has nothing to do with whether or not there is an account for that thing.
No, my argument is really not that. It's that the atheist worldview, because it uses logic and it assumes things like logic, even though it has no account for them, it's not a coherent worldview, whereas a theistic worldview has an account for those things. Okay, now, I'm not saying that proves, hold on, I'm not saying that proves that God exists. I'm just saying the worldview is more coherent from the foundation.
Okay, so if the atheist worldview is coherent, is that the claim?
No, the claim is that atheists don't have a foundation to.
Well, that's the second thing. That's the second premise. Logic. I'm asking about the first premise.
If the atheist, okay, let me say the first premise. Let me just lay out my argument this way, and then you can write it the way you want. So, from their foundation, they don't have a justification for logic, truth claims, knowledge itself.
Yep, that's premise two.
They're just using those things. So it makes their entire worldview from the base up incoherent, whereas a theistic view has a foundation.
Okay, so this is the argument that you have
for these things. But hold on, let me say this doesn't prove. I'm not saying this proves the existence of God. I'm saying this makes the worldview coherent, because from my perspective,
so this is the argument that you're making.
Can account for these things, and an atheistic worldview cannot account for these things.
This is the argument that you're making. If the atheist worldview is coherent, then atheists should be able to account for logic. Premise 2, atheists cannot account for logic. Conclusion, the atheist worldview is incoherent. This is the argument, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, again, this is the exact same as the argument that we just agreed was flawed in multiple ways. We just replace the atheist worldview as coherent with God exists. We replace we replace logic with non-causal, non-temporal causation. Then we replace atheists with theists, and then we come to the conclusion that God does not exist.
No,
because the argument is identical. Right?
No, because a theistic worldview can account for logic. It has. If you're switching out logic,
okay, hold on. Let's do variables then. You say if A, then B. Premise 2. So premise 2, not B. Conclusion, not A. And that's a perfectly valid argument. This is perfectly valid. This is called modus tollens, right? So if you replace A with, the atheist worldview is coherent, and B with atheists can account for logic, then you get exactly this. If you replace A with God doesn't exist, and B, or if God exists, and B with an account, or theists can account for non-temporal causation, the argument form is valid. The issue is that premise 1 is completely unfounded. How does it follow that if the atheist worldview is coherent, then atheists should be able to account for logic? And then premise 2 is also completely unfounded. How can you say that atheists cannot account for logic? What is the evidence for these claims? What is the evidence for either of these propositions?
The atheists can't account for logic?
Yeah.
That they have their foundation cannot prove the existence of logic. It's just a mind.
That's just asserting the thing again. That's just asserting the truth of premise 2 without actually providing argument for premise 2.
Okay, so you wanted me to answer how can atheists
what is the argument for the claim atheists cannot account for logic?
Because logic is they're just hold on, wait, Dave. Let me see. I got some notes here I was taking. How can I make the argument atheists cannot account for logic? Because their ultimate worldview, well, you would disagree with this because you said atheists, or some atheists are like Buddhists, so they don't completely disagree with things that are immaterial. But I would say generally, most atheists do assume that things
this
are
isn't
immaterial.
about most, because the statement here is supposed to be true about all atheists, right? Every single atheist every single atheist, because that would account for all of the atheist worldviews. We could make this a little bit more correct by putting atheist worldviews cannot account for logic, right?
Yeah, there you go. That's actually better. So atheist worldviews cannot account for logic. Yeah, they just assume that logic exists.
How is that justification for atheist worldviews cannot account for logic?
Because they're just assuming they exist, much like a theist would just assume God exists.
Well, A, assuming something exists doesn't mean that you can't account for the thing. B, you're just asserting that they just assume logic exists. But again, that's not the case. I can give you an example of a friend of mine who's an atheist who claims to have a proof that you can prove that logic exists.
I would love to hear it.
Like a priori. You'll have to go talk to Ian if you want that. Have you spoken with Ian before?
No, I know who he is though. I think is he
Curly hair guy, glasses.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he has an argument. I'm not sure I really buy it, but he has an argument for why he thinks that he can prove atheist or logic exists without like any sort of underlying assumptions. But look, the point is,
you don't buy it. Did you say you don't buy his argument?
I don't buy it because I'm a nominalist. It's not clear. It's not clear to like. I don't even think that it's a correct. I think that there's a category error in the statement that logic, like I don't even think that the phrase logic exists even makes sense. I don't even think that that's a sensible sentence.
Can you just really quick give me like an elaboration on that, just so I can get
So nominalism is the view that like these kinds of things like math and categories and perhaps logic itself these are like essentially language games that we came up with to try to make sense of the things that we see.
Okay. There are language games that we use to just basically
like to describe things. So think of it this way: like a nominalist thinks that like the rules of chess exist, but like they're made up by people. So even though like there is a correct answer to like how to put someone in checkmate, that's like a made up game, right? It's not like something that like if people didn't exist, chess would not exist. Right,
but that's a way different category than the law.
There's still a correct answer about what like when somebody's in checkmate.
Sure, but chess is a far different thing from the laws of logic.
I see them as basically the same.
Really? Okay,
yeah.
So
and that's a whole separate conversation. We could get into it, but like I imagine that there's going to be a lot of confusion. You've been on for a while, so Gigi, before I kick you off and let you go, I do want to press back on something on the because you've been running the tag argument. Do you believe that God is all-knowing?
Do I believe God is all-knowing?
Yep.
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay, so you're not a Christian then?
I am a Christian, but I'm not sure that everything that Christians or Christianity as a religion or even the Bible makes to make claims about God is completely true. I would say, I don't know. I mean, God is a mystery from my perspective.
I mean, so in various verses in the Bible, it says that God knows everything. He's perfect in knowledge. His understanding has no limit. Like that's just in the Bible.
I know it says those things, but I also think the Bible, from my perspective, I'm more of a like Christian in the I don't have a particular denomination. It's denomination. I think
this isn't a denomination dependent thing. This is just what it says in the Bible.
Yeah, and the Bible is not my idol. So I think the Bible has a lot of good wisdom and knowledge in it, but I don't think every exact thing in it is completely. I see it as people who are getting close to a truth that is much more coherent than like the other religions, I would say. But it's like, do I think that every single thing in it is like the infallible, like actually the word of God?
So
I would say,
do you think that God has any knowledge?
Yes.
Okay. How does God justify that knowledge?
How does God justify the knowledge? Well, if God itself would be the justification for the knowledge.
Yeah. So does God have knowledge?
God is knowledge.
So then the answer is no, God does not have knowledge.
Have in the sense of like how we have knowledge? Probably not. No.
So does God know things?
I don't know.
Okay. I mean, it seems like you want to say yes, of course God knows things. Like, does God know? God know what would happen when He created the universe?
I don't know.
So let's just look at the two options. Suppose that He didn't know what would happen when God created the universe, or when He created the universe. Suppose He doesn't know anything, right? Then it'd be very, very strange to call it a God if it doesn't know anything. Because, in fact, I would argue that it doesn't even make sense to call it a mind if it doesn't know anything. I would think that minds kind of have to know things.
Well, I would say, since God is so far out of our ability to make sense of or contemplate, that we can't put God in these like boxes of like, you're asking me these questions like, does God have knowledge? Does God have no knowledge? All that. I don't know. I'm like,
right. So we're going to play out both. So do you think that anything with a mind knows that it exists?
Anything with a mind knows it exists. Knows that it exists. I think any creature with a mind knows that it exists, but I can't speak for the creator of all things, or a God.
Okay, so do you this is going to run into very, very quick incoherence. So it seems like you're wishy-washy on whether it makes sense for a mind to know anything, or whether or not whether it's possible for a mind to not know anything. But I mean, just from the cogito, which was Rene Descartes, if you will. The weakest form of the cogito is there is thought, right? Or thinking is happening. And so minds, that's what minds do. Minds think. And so if your claim is that God is a mind, then God would know that thinking is happening by direct experience. And if that's the case, then God has knowledge about something. Otherwise, it can't be thinking, which means it wouldn't be a mind.
I don't know if my claim, I know I said earlier like a rational mind behind the universe, but I was using mind in probably a colloquial sense. I don't know if God has a mind in the sense that we understand minds, or we have a mind. I don't know. I can't account. There's just no way to know. You know what I mean? I don't think claims about God. I think the closest, I guess generally my belief is that like Jesus and the things he taught and said and preached are the closest we can get to like what the mind of God thinks. So like love your neighbor as yourself.
Wait, but what mind of God? You're not even sure if God has a mind. I don't even know what it means. I don't even know what it means for there to be like divine creation if God doesn't have a mind, because like creation is a thing that like requires will.
So I'm using the terms that are best to my knowledge, but that I'm not willing to claim that I actually fully know what God is or how God operates, or if God has a mind or not, or if God knows all things or doesn't.
Gigi, what's the worst about what just happened?
Sure, tell me.
The moment I pressed you on what it is you believe, you're just like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But you're taking suppose that my answer to your claim, how do you justify logic? If I said, I don't know, you would have declared victory.
No, I wouldn't have declared victory. I would have said that's an honest answer.
And then you would have said, and therefore, the theistic worldview is more justified. It's more coherent, or whatever the phrase might be.
Well, yeah, I do think.
But the moment I push you on yours and you say, I don't know, well, okay, I'm going to declare, well, therefore, the atheist worldview is more coherent, because the atheist worldview knows what things have minds and what things don't have minds.
They don't, though. They can't. So like, just because I don't know exactly how God operates doesn't mean that a theist.
You don't know at all how God operates. It's not just you don't know. It's not like you don't know the inner workings. You don't know anything about how God behaves. You don't even know if God has a mind.
How would I be able to know that?
Presumably, it's part of your theology.
No, I don't.
And
think
actually, under your worldview, knowledge is like you can come to true knowledge. And that true knowledge comes from God. So if you're able to come to true knowledge, then in principle, it's possible to come to true knowledge about God's mind, or the existence of God's mind.
No, I think that I think that a theistic foundation makes things like knowledge, truth, and logic make sense.
But what is a theistic foundation then, if you don't even know if the God has a mind?
That there is a personal God in the universe.
A personal God. Personal requires a mind.
Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I mean, we can't fully know.
What do you think a personal God is?
I'll grant you this. Jesus Christ has a mind.
Okay, is Jesus Christ God?
I believe he is God in human flesh. Yes.
Okay, great. So does Jesus Christ have knowledge?
Yeah.
Okay, how does Jesus justify his knowledge?
How does Jesus well, if he is God, well, he's a human being, so he has two natures, one divine, one human.
Yeah, I'm talking about the divine nature.
Okay, how does the divine nature justify knowledge?
Mm-hmm.
I would say his you can't have so the ultimate. Hang on, let me think about a way to word this for you. How does he justify his knowledge? Because he has a coherent theistic worldview. He believes in God. He believes in God the Father.
So you're saying that God justifies his own knowledge because God exists?
Because it's a coherent. So so let me think. How does Jesus justify his knowledge to God? The foundation of his argument would be a theistic worldview. So this all is going back to the very beginning, that the ultimate.
It seems like we're a little bit stuck here because look, if you're saying that Jesus, who is God, has knowledge, and that knowledge is justified by a theistic worldview, and which is a very broad way of saying that knowledge is justified by God justifying it, by God's existence allowing for the justification of knowledge, then all you're saying is that God's knowledge justifies itself. And things can't justify themselves, otherwise you end up in a circle.
Well, like I said earlier, all arguments ultimately will come down to.
Well, so you're saying that God's knowledge is not justified, it's circular? It doesn't have some deep justification?
It's circular, but it's coherent. Whereas in atheistic
right, but so then it's not justified. It doesn't have some foundation for its existence or for its justification.
The foundation would be God makes these things make sense. So the argument I have is that
God has knowledge. God has knowledge because God makes himself have knowledge. That's what you're telling me?
So both theistic and both atheistic worldviews ultimately will be circular at the end, but the theistic one has a coherency to justify things like logic, knowledge, and truth.
Sorry, there's no coherency in the justification of God's knowledge, right? This isn't even coherency. This is just an assertion. It's the statement that God's knowledge is justified because God's knowledge is That's the claim that you're making. God can't ground his knowledge. It's not grounded in anything.
No, because God existing just makes these things coherent. It makes them make sense. It makes logic, knowledge.
So God's knowledge makes God's knowledge make sense, is what you're telling me.
Our ability to make any sort of knowledge claims.
I'm asking about God's knowledge claims. Would you agree Jesus being God has knowledge?
Because he's a human, yes, he would have that.
Yeah, but he's also God, right?
He is yes.
Okay, and so what you're telling me is that there is no justification for Jesus God's knowledge. Because the justification is that God exists. So God's knowledge exists because God exists? Is what you're telling me? That doesn't sound like a justification to me. Justifications give reasons for why things are true.
I think it's not justifying it. I'm giving a reason why it makes sense, why knowledge makes sense at all. How it can be accounted for.
Yeah, so how does God's knowledge make sense?
I don't know. I can't tell you how God's knowledge makes sense. I can't tell you anything about God that is going to make sense. My main point is that
so both our worldviews terminate, and I can't make sense of it.
You can't. So wait, are you saying you can't make sense of? Did you say both of our worldviews?
Suppose my answer to how I justify knowledge is I don't know. Well, then it sounds like both of our answers are at the bottom foundation. It's just we don't know how to make sense of it.
No, that would be true. But my main point, my tack on to that would be that an atheist worldview really doesn't make sense with it. There would have to be at least a.
That's something that you didn't prove. That's something you didn't prove. You just kind of asserted it. But we just agreed that you can't make sense of how God justifies knowledge.
No, I mean anybody can't know the mind or how God works. But I'm saying at least
that sounds like a cop-out.
At the very least, deism makes more coherent sense and has a more coherent worldview than even atheism does.
I mean, but it doesn't. Because it terminates at it lacks a foundation, right? It terminates at a lack of a foundation.
Well, that would be the foundation. That would be the springboard.
So the foundation is the lack of foundation? Okay.
No, how is that? Wait, what?
It terminates at no foundation at all. Look, because if God justifies knowledge, if God is the foundation for knowledge claims, for truth claims, for logic, whatever.
God is what makes knowledge make sense. Makes the claim that knowledge exists make sense.
Yeah. So God is You're actually I actually don't know what that statement means. When you say it makes sense, are you just saying that God allows for logic to exist so you can have logically coherent worldviews?
I'm saying that the foundation for Okay, hold on. I'm getting so confused and lost here.
We grant that.
Look, can I just ask you? Okay, well, no, I've already asked you that. I don't. I mean, like, I don't know, man. I do think we probably went on a little bit long here, and I probably need to like take a breather.
That's fair, GG. Thank you for being here, bud.
Hey, no problem. It was good talking to you.
Take care. One moment. All right, let's read some super chats, and then we will move on to the next guest. We have a lot of super chats to get through. That was a long guest, but he was. I think he was here in good faith. At least that was his intent. I mean, he ran tag, which means that he's not here in good faith, but he tried. So we have $10 from Skeptical Dilettante. Dude is stuck in a dialogue loop. Yeah, that's what tag does to a brain. Thank you for the $10 though. And we have $2 from Unknown IP, $2 Australian dollars. Agnostic atheist or pure atheist? Like 100% no God. Look, I just used the word atheist because I'm convinced that there isn't a God. That's all. And then we have $100 from Aaron Leitz. Let's get a huge W for Aaron in the comments. Comments on everywhere, YouTube, TikTok, huge W for Aaron because $100 is super meaningful. Thank you, Aaron. And now let's read the comment. Let me present to you my claim sandwich. Precept script, then I parrot from Jade Dyer, who parrots from Bonson and Van Til. Ready? Because I say so times infinity. Yeah, that's what we were doing. I was trying to, look, like you can run the anti-tag arguments if you want, but I think it's more fruitful to just try to explain to people why tag doesn't work, but we didn't really get through to him. Maybe we did. Give him some time to think. Brian Astrabeel, thank you for the $5, Brian. Question to ask guest: why is belief of God necessary for belief of anything supernatural? Yeah, so he did finally admit that it's possible to believe in the supernatural without believing in God. We have £2 from Dr. Wasambla. Hi, Dr. Blitz, hail Doug, and the Atheist Unicorn. What about Atheismo? You can't forget about Atheismo. Gretchen sent $3. Anti-theist, nihilist, dualist here. Fuck with that, GG. Based Gretchen. Most confusing atheist worldview. Velvet sends 2 Canuck bucks to say God exists because immoral behavior equals destruction. That's an interesting claim. I guess we could have that conversation. Velvet sent another $2 to say sin equals missing the mark leading to your destruction. Okay. DG sent $5. Thank you, DG. If math objects don't exist, then how can it bring about scientific discoveries? Relativity was true before it was tested for mathematical reasoning. Well, that's a whole conversation. And then we have €5 from Ellie. Thanks for streaming. I had open heart surgery last week, and you and Justin, Ian, Jovan have kept my godless spirits up. Well, look, we try. We're making an ecosystem here, right? And then Carla finally with the $5 says, I unloaded all the groceries, put everything away, made lunch, sat down, and wow, he was still going. You're a prince among men, Blitz. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it went on for a while. By the way, we do have, if you're on YouTube, make sure, if you're on YouTube and you're a member, make sure to spam those new emojis that we have, because we have 6 new emojis for YouTube members. And the other perk that YouTube members get is that YouTube members get access to my debate notes, which have a whole thing. In fact, actually, let me show you. They have a whole thing on tag. So if you go to the theism tab, there's a whole argument on presuppositionalism. There's a whole guide, whole set of arguments against, as a guide against presup arguments like we just saw. So if you want access to my notes, if you want access to the emojis, use them. But you got to be a member first. Anyway, let's bring on our next guest. Let us talk to, oh, is that the real PMARS? Should we talk, y'all, should we talk to PMARS? Do we want to talk to PMARS? Let me drink some water. Does YouTube really exist? All right, looks like people want, it looks like there's some disagreement, but let's bring up PMARS. PMARS, long time no talk. PMARS? Oh, where'd he go?
So there's a counter argument to tag.
It's an anti-tag.
Anti-tag?
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with it, so I don't run it, and it's not something I'm interested in doing because I think that it's basically running tag in reverse.
That doesn't make any sense. Tag is about an absolute foundation, because evidence, truth, reason, these things require an absolute foundation. So that's what tag's about.
Yep.
So like,
now, right. So the question. So this isn't anti-tag, and if you want to talk anti-tag, go talk to Ian because Ian runs it quite frequently, and it's it's fun. One sec.
Anti-tag. Ian is kind of like.
But one thing that you should definitely explain is if tag explains the justification for knowledge, for truth, for logic, for moral, or for ethics, etc., in God, then what is the justification for God's knowledge?
God.
So it's self-justifying? So it doesn't have a foundation?
It is the foundation.
So does God know anything in your worldview?
Yeah, he knows everything.
So he knows everything. Okay, so if he knows everything, how do you define knowledge?
It doesn't matter. But like, the idea is that
we could use the classical notion of like a justified true belief or something like that.
Yeah.
But if it's so, what's the justification for God's knowledge?
God.
So can a thing justify itself in your worldview?
Well, what God would be the absolute. So God creates knowledge, right? And then humans discover knowledge. What?
That's the claim anyway.
Well, that's the view. So I mean, if you're gonna
that's
attack a straw man, that's not the view, right? So God creates.
I'm not trying to attack a straw man. You believe that God knows everything, so God has knowledge, and
he creates knowledge.
Sure,
humans discover knowledge.
So to be clear, I could create an iPhone, but still not have an iPhone, right? So does God have knowledge, or does God just create knowledge?
He's the ground of knowledge. He's the source of knowledge.
Does God know things? Does God know that he exists?
He knows all true propositions.
Okay, so how does he justify that knowledge?
He is the justification.
That doesn't seem like it answers my question. I don't know what it means for a thing to justify itself.
Think about it. Like, God decides what's true. He's the authority of fact, right? So facts require some authority to determine what's a fact and what's not.
I don't know what that means.
Well, anytime you make a truth claim, you're speaking.
I mean, are you talking about like a truth maker?
I'm saying like God would be the ultimate reality. He would dictate all states of affairs. He determines like what is, what can, what cannot be, what's possible, what's impossible, what's necessary, what's contingent.
So you're telling me that that God's the truth maker.
He's the source of truth. Yeah. So like Jesus says, I am the truth. He doesn't say, I know the truth.
Right. So God is the truth. God is the truth maker. God is the state of, well, okay. So what's your theory of truth here?
He's the arbiter of truth.
What's your theory of truth here?
If the source of truth makes a claim,
like, is it a correspondence theory of truth, or like, what is it?
Well, it would depend. I would use both correspondence and coherent. But you're trying to derail into like.
No, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not like straw manning you. That's why I'm trying to figure out what your theory of truth is.
You're derailing. Because you can't handle it.
You
can't handle it. The truth is you can't handle tag.
We're literally talking about your worldview right now. You just want to pivot to tag because you think that you're losing, I guess. But I didn't even think that you were losing. I think that we were just having a normal conversation. No, we're talking about your worldview.
You're trying to derail. Like,
I'm literally you came on asking about anti-tag, and so I'm giving you an example of a way that like tag kind of self-defeats itself here. This isn't quite anti-tag, but this is a critique that's fairly common amongst tag, which is that God's knowledge is unjustified.
That doesn't make any sense. God is the absolute.
Which part was confusing for you, PMARS?
Well, God is the source of truth. So it doesn't make any sense to say that why would God have to justify any of his claims?
That's just what knowledge is. Knowledge is something that is a justified true belief, if you use the classical definition.
We have like a revelational epistemology. So we think that God's revealed claims are justified in virtue that they come from God, right? He's the, like, God saying something, God making a claim is better than any like scientific evidence, right?
I mean, that's great, but if you don't think that knowledge is justified true belief, what do you think it is?
Well, it would be justified. See, this is we disagree. That I believe God is the best justification for any claim, right? That's where
can
we
you just
disagree.
define what you mean by knowledge?
Justified true belief.
Okay,
Whatever.
so if it's a justified true belief and God has knowledge in your worldview, then it requires justification.
God's the justification.
So a thing can justify itself in your worldview.
Yeah, he's self-authentic. Well, in your worldview too. If you deny a self-authenticating proposition, then you completely undermine your ability to make a proposition.
Okay, so
there has to be one.
So in your worldview, so it is acceptable to you for me to just make a statement and just say it's self-justifying?
If it's ultimate. So any worldview is going to start.
How do you tell the difference between an ultimate statement and a non-ultimate statement?
Any worldview is going to, like, without a self-authenticating truth statement, you couldn't make any.
How do you tell when a truth statement is self-authenticating?
So think of like verification principle. So how do we know the verification principle is true? In virtue that we use it to verify anything is true. Right?
I wasn't asking for an example.
You have a verification principle, right? Because you have to verify.
I use several.
To verify something's true, you'd use a verification principle. So what you're basically asking me is, how do I verify my verification principle?
That's not what I'm asking you.
Well, the answer to that question is a verification.
This is a weird straw man that you're telling me what I'm asking you, but I'm not asking you that. I'm asking.
Okay, you're trying to.
It seems like you're just kind of like going off of the. You're trying to get back on your script, I guess, because I had you off your script.
You should stick to science because you don't really understand what's going on in this conversation. You should just talk about science.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
God is a metaphysical claim.
I mean, like, look. How do you tell when something is? How do you tell when a proposition is self-justifying? What's the rule of thumb that you use?
Because when we're talking about a verification principle.
We're not talking about a verification principle. I'm asking,
that's what God is.
Given a proposition, how do you establish whether that proposition is self-justifying?
Well, how do you establish a proposition's true? You would verify it with a verification principle.
That's unrelated to the question I asked.
Okay, and so I can't make an argument because Blitz says so. You're a coward. I'm just going to. I guess if you're not going to let me talk,
I'm not even asking you to make an argument. I'm just asking you to answer a question. How do you tell the difference between a self-justifying and a non-self-justifying proposition? What properties does a self-justifying proposition have that a non-self-justifying proposition doesn't?
What's going on in the debate is Blitz is losing, so he's asking me to verify my verification principle.
Apparently, I'm losing by merely asking a question that you're dodging from.
It's not dodging.
You're dodging repeatedly. I'm asking a very simple question. How do you tell the difference between a self-justifying and a non-self-justifying proposition?
The question is more loaded than Ernest Hemingway, and the objectable premise is you're asking me to verify my verification principle.
No, I'm not asking you to verify anything. I just want a rule of thumb, like the way that you tell these things apart.
God is the verification principle.
Like for example, if I just told you a proposition, the sky is blue, how would you tell? What method would you use to determine whether or not the sky is blue is a self-justifying proposition or a non-self-justifying proposition?
Is the sky is blue a verification principle?
I'm not asking about a verification principle. I'm asking about a proposition in general.
God is my verification principle.
I'm asking about any proposition.
Run away.
Answer the question. You're telling me I'm running? Answer the damn question, P-Mars. Why can't you answer the question?
God is a verification principle.
Why can't you answer the question? For any proposition, how do you tell if it's self-justifying or not?
All you're saying is I can't make an argument because you say so. God is a verification principle.
I'm asking a very simple question.
No, you're trying to frame the discussion in a way that God is...
This is a very simple question. It just seems like you're struggling
It's not a simple question.
It's not a simple question because you know you have no answer.
I do have an answer.
Okay, so then what's the answer? What's the answer?
That God's a verification principle, and verification principles are verified in virtue that we use them to verify anything is true. So if your verification principle...
I'm sorry, did that address my question of given a proposition, how do you establish if it's self-justifying? Because I didn't hear the word self-justifying or proposition anywhere in that answer, so it just sounds like you were talking about something else.
Verify. Verification principle is verified
Oh,
justified.
cool. I'm not talking about verification principles or verification. I'm talking about
Yes, you
self-justifying
are.
propositions.
You're trying to frame the debate. You're trying to frame the discussion in a way in which God isn't a verification principle. And
I'm
that's
not trying to do
completely
anything of the
dishonest.
sort. I'm asking you,
You're
given a
straw
proposition,
manning.
how do you check whether that proposition is self-justifying or not?
You're straw manning because it's a
You said
verification
you
principle.
said that God is a self-justifying proposition, which, by the way, is a category error, but fine. I know what you mean.
A category error? How is that a category?
It's a category error because God's not a proposition.
Without it. God is not a proposition. He's the ground of propositions.
Yeah,
You have
sure,
to have a
under
self.
your worldview, that might be the case. That doesn't mean that God is a proposition. A proposition is an object with
He's
a
a
predicate, right?
An absolute identity state, which would be a self-authenticating truth statement.
Yeah. So
He absolutely
I
is
don't
a
know
self-authenticating.
so a truth statement is typically used to describe a proposition. Actually, a truth statement isn't
A
really
truth
even
statement.
that.
I don't say proposition.
What do you mean
because
by truth
when
statement?
When you say proposition, atheists think you're trying to ask someone to have sex with you. So I say truth statement.
PMARS, what?
Because in atheism, a proposition is when you go, "Hey, do you want to spend the night at my? You want to go camping?" That's a
PMARS,
proposition.
are you? Is your brain like that smooth? Like
What?
you know that propositions are used in like analytic philosophy, right?
Yeah, but it's just a true. I don't like to use philosophical terms so the audience can understand.
Okay, well,
Like, the
everybody here
average
knows what a
atheist
proposition
thinks
is.
A proposition
And we're
is
not
like
talking
asking
about
someone to spend
propositioning
the
you,
night.
PMARS, so you don't have to load up your phone or
It's
anything.
just I'm not muddying it. I'm making it more clear. It's just a proposition.
Okay,
is
so
a
when you say truth statement, you mean proposition. Great.
that's the same thing.
Okay, great. So that's a category error. To say that an object is a truth statement is a category error. Objects plus predicates give you propositions. Or truth statements, if you will. That would be like saying the sky is a truth statement. Like that doesn't make any sense. It's the wrong category of things. It's an object. It doesn't have a truth value.
God's claims are self-authenticating in virtue.
Claims perhaps can be propositions. Things like the sky is blue. That's a proposition because it has a predicate is blue attached to an object.
The Bible
but saying that God
contains...
is a proposition it's a mistake, right? Like you're just doing mistaken reasoning.
No, I'm saying that the Bible is a collection of truth statements or propositions.
That's great. I understand that that's the worldview. That's fine.
They would be self-authenticating in virtue that they come from God.
Right. So the question is given a proposition, how do you check whether that proposition is self-justifying?
If it's a verification principle, that's what I'm telling you.
So if the proposition is a verification principle, then it's self-justifying?
I'm appealing to the scriptural verification principle.
Okay, great. Okay, so if I say, so suppose that I have the proposition, all propositions are true. That is a verification principle, right? It tells you how to establish whether or not a proposition is true or false. And so because it's a verification principle, it's self-justifying? Is that your position?
That's how do we verify a verification principle?
Well, okay, so then you would agree that the foundation, if I had as my foundation, all propositions are true, you would just agree that that's like a super coherent worldview.
I don't see how that follows.
Well, it's self-justifying, so it doesn't need further justification, right?
I don't know. This is kind of annoying because like you don't know what you're talking about.
You would call it annoying when you're losing this hard, getting folded like in
I don't see how
Chatterbait.
I'm losing. What? So let's say the Bible's not true. Now I have no standard of truth. So what? How do I now when I get out of bed tomorrow? Because like let's say you're right, the Bible's false. I get out of bed tomorrow. How do I know something's true? What's my standard of truth?
You could use some other method, right? Normal people have multiple means that they use to come to true conclusions about the world around them and about their own thoughts and about metaphysics and all sorts of things.
You've just screwed me over. Now I can't live my life without a standard of truth, and you've just robbed me because you've convinced me.
Oh, poor PMARS. He's not capable of thinking for himself. He
You're
must
not going to
rely
help
on
me
God
out.
in
You're
order
not
to be
going to
able to
help
come
me
to
out.
true
Help a
conclusions about the
brother
world.
out. Help a fellow atheist. Now I'm a fellow atheist. I need your help. What's the standard of truth? How do we know it's true?
You can have multiple standards of truth. You can have empirical
Multiple
truths. You can
standards.
have mathematical truths. Yeah.
So there's no objective standard?
I don't know what you mean by an objective standard. Do you mean a single standard?
Well, I mean, I would like a standard of truth that's not just like human speculation or human opinion, because I don't trust human authority.
Well, who's relying on human authority? The mathematical truths? Do those rely on human authority?
If we don't have the authority of God, all we have is human authority. What other authority is there? What other authority is there?
Perhaps you think that mathematical objects exist, and then you can rely on mathematical objects.
But what would be the authority?
I don't know what you mean by authority. It seems like you're still a theist, though, P-Mars.
What does authority mean?
It seems like you're still a theist. You're demanding an authority for something that doesn't require
one. You're a
one.
professional academic, and you don't know what an authority means?
No, it seems like you're confused, and you're trying to invoke theism again, even though you're pretending to be an atheist.
Can you ask for your money back on your degree?
I didn't pay any money for my degree. For my 4 degrees, actually.
That's about what it's worth.
Well, I guess that you would think so, huh?
Yeah. I don't know. See, we're having a metaphysical discussion. You should stick to physics. Metaphysics is not your bag.
You should stick to Chatterbait.
Okay. Well, God bless you, sir.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He couldn't engage, right? Like, I asked him a really simple question, and he just nah. He just couldn't. All right, let's read some super chats. Duke of Shaska sends €5 to ask, who is P-Mars, and do they know about our Rock and Savior Doug? P-Mars probably does. Probably does know about the Rock and Savior Rock and Savior Doug. Hard Work sends $5 to ask, if God is knowledge, then it's just trivially true atheists don't have knowledge, truth, and on that definition. Who cares about the argument? It's useless. Yeah, that is a good point, right? If you define God to be knowledge, then yeah, atheists don't have that. But that's just not what most people mean, right? Garba Gaiman sends 5 Canuck bucks for P-Mars has an embarrassment fetish. He wants you to crush him. Oh no. Nightman cometh, thank you for the $10. P-Mars becomes the cowardly lion when debating anyone that isn't a random TikTok guest. True. Felicia sends $2. You are such a Philbro dum-dum, P-Mars. Go outside. Duke of Shaska sends €5. Wow, people are being mean to, people should be mean to P-Mars because he's a hypocritical asshole. But anyway. Duke says, P no brains, weapons grade stupidity here merits a piece of wisdom of Peterson. Existence arises and subsides in exponential dominance hierarchy. True. Very true. Tim Bimbadil sends $2. Oh, so this is P-Mars. I understand now. Yeah, he's a character. Gretchen sends $3. P-Mars, at best, you're a Philbro with a thesaurus. True. Look, DG sent $2. There's no need to attack Blitz's education. Look, if he's going to attack my education, I'll attack his hypocritical Chatterbait use. For those who don't know, and by the way, I'm super pro queer, pro LGBTQ. It's great. If you want to be gay, if you want to be, well, it's not really a want, it's just a thing that you are. If you're gay, if you're trans, if you're queer, whatever, cool. More power to you. More pride to you. However, P-Mars is like a raging homophobe. And then it came out that P-Mars could be found on Chatterbait asking for men. And that's the issue, right? That's the issue. We have one more super chat. Mike Townsend with the $5. Thank you. If God was real, it would send Piss Mars straight to the lake of fire. What an idiot. Yeah, fair enough. Anyway, let's bring up another guest. I think I've spoken with a few of these people. Oh, no, I have a guest on, let's talk to a guest on YouTube. Omen, how's it going? Omen, can you hear me? Omen. All right, looks like Omen's not here. Rubble, can you hear me?
Oh, yo, what's up?
Hey, Rubble, how's it going?
What is up?
Not a whole lot. Do you believe in God, Rubble?
I kind of do. I guess, God, I feel is very 7 billion different definitions of God. I believe in, a first cause, first creator. There's a
okay,
gap
so you
there,
mean some being that created the universe, perhaps, or created reality, if you will.
Yeah, deism, deist. Here.
Deist. Okay, yeah. So, what properties does the God that you believe in have?
See, I guess I take an agnostic view there, but I do know, right, that something created this. That's where I believe, and I feel like I can try to convince you.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
But actually, God, I got kind of worried when you brought up was this logical nihilism that
I don't know what you mean by logical nihilism.
Like
I'm a nominalist.
Nominalist. I've never heard that. What is like? Can you explain more about that? Because
Yeah, it's just that things like mathematics and so on are like word games or language games.
Word game. What about logic? Is
Yeah,
that
same
logic
thing. Same category.
So, all right. So modal logic. Like, what do you know about? You were using like very logical things in your arguments.
Yeah. Just because they're word games doesn't mean that they're not useful. Doesn't mean that they're not helpful.
So you're saying there's just not truths. Like they're not like
I don't like
universal truths.
So
you're just saying that they do exist.
Logic exists in minds. Logic doesn't exist when there's no minds around. So as far as I'm concerned, these are things that human minds do.
Oh, okay. So, but you understand that there's things that are contingent and on happening, right?
So, and there's two different ways that people often use the word contingent. Do you mean contingent in the sense of like it depends on something else, or do you mean contingent in the sense of like there exists a possible world where the contingent thing exists, and there exists a possible world where the contingent thing does not exist?
I mean that it could possibly not exist. I could have been somewhere.
Okay. So you mean contingent in the modal sense? Sure, that's fine.
Yes. Versus and then the things that like has to exist, right?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so sure. Whether or not there are contingent things, that's a conversation that we should probably end up having. But sure, I understand what it means for something to be contingent.
See, because I come to the conclusion of God via like causation. Right?
Okay. Yeah. How do you figure?
Are we talking all the way to the beginning of the universe? There's causation for everything. Do you believe in an infinite causation? Do you think causation is
not necessarily, but I kind of lean that way.
Okay, so I
also probably understand cause in a very different way than you do.
Okay, explain it.
So I understand cause to be like kind of like an intuitive or like colloquial way of understanding a series of events that or a series of events that like necessarily follow one another. Or that typically follow one another. For example, we would say that like the cause of the baseball going through the window is somebody throwing that. And the reason why is because when somebody throws a baseball at a window, it always follows next that the baseball goes through the window, assuming the window's normal, right? And so like we understand that causation is like the way that I understand causation in the kind of sense of like A causes B is merely like an agreed upon regularity of like a series of events in space-time.
Run that last thing that you just said back though.
Yeah, it's an agreed upon regularity that describes a series of events in space-time.
And but we can agree that we can follow that agreed upon my bad. Words are hard. We can agree that we can follow that back to beginning of time, or like
if there is a beginning of time, then yeah, you could.
We can go back down.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. If there is a beginning of time, then you could. If there's not a beginning of time, then you couldn't, because there wouldn't be a beginning.
I feel logically, right, but then you're gonna hit me with some facts. I'm sure. Logically, I feel like you can't have an infinite amount of anything. Like
why not?
Infinity is a lot because there's no start. There's no like infinity. I would feel is impossible because
I just don't understand. Like I don't share that intuition with you.
Okay. So if we're talking right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we talking? I joined.
Yeah, there was something that led us to have this conversation. Sure.
Okay. Why are you on YouTube? You have a reason for that. You can go to your birth. You can go to your parents' birth. You can go to the start of like. I feel like you can keep on going back, but eventually you will reach a first cause because. You cannot have an infinite amount of causes because for something needs to be contingent. Something needs to cause it.
Yeah. So suppose that the universe is contingent. Suppose that everything in the universe is contingent. Then everything would have a cause. But that doesn't mean that there's a final cause. You could just have an infinite chain of causes. I don't see what the issue is.
Okay, but it wouldn't be infinite. If you're saying like going into the future, you can't have a final cause.
No, sorry, I meant final and like an ultimate cause.
Oh, like a beginning. Right.
Yeah. Like it just doesn't follow to me. I just don't see how it follows that like just because a thing is contingent, there must be an ultimate foundation that is like the initial cause. That just doesn't. I don't share that intuition.
Okay, so like, I look at it as like I was first explained via a Grim Reaper paradox explanation. Do you know about that one?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so with a cause, right? Something needs to cause the first cause, right? That cause would have to be greater than all these other causes because it would have to be. Hold on, I'm losing my argument right here. I've confused myself.
He is stunned in his confusion.
I fully admit it. I
You're
went down a
fine.
path.
Take your time.
Hold on, I should have been taking notes. Goddamn. All right. Which I was when you were talking earlier. So let's run it back. You don't believe that logic, that a first cause is contingent on what?
I don't think that a first cause is necessary. Now, it could be the case that there is a first cause in the sense that there is like a first moment of time.
Mm-hmm.
I would just posit then that there are non-temporal relations that allowed for that first moment of time to exist. And, you know, you could have, like, you don't require a god for that.
Okay. So I have a problem with the word God because I feel like I've heard God explained in like, people think God is consciousness. People think God is just.
What I mean is you don't need like a divine creator.
Divine creator,
or perhaps a supernatural creator that's responsible for creating physical reality. I don't think that that's necessary to have a first moment of time.
You don't think it's necessary? So you think it can just happen, right? It's
no. I think that there can be non-temporal relations that allow for such a thing to exist.
Hold on, my dog is never mind. She's fine. Non-temporal relation.
Mm-hmm.
So, a non-temporal relation is a connection between two things. I'm so sorry. That holds regardless of when anything happens. It's not about time or sequence at all.
Yeah, so you could have spatial relations that allow for the existence of a first moment of time.
I'm lost here. Explain it to me like I'm 5, right? So you're saying
you're asking me to explain to you how the beginning or how the first moment of time could exist like you're 5?
No.
Sorry, it's not going to happen.
No. I agree. Sorry, that's my bad. I'm saying that So I'm saying something caused, like a causation, right? Something caused the first time. You're saying a non-temporal relation.
Well, I don't think it makes sense to talk about temporal. I don't think it makes sense to talk about causation in the traditional sense if you're talking about the first moment of time, because causation is a temporal thing, right? It's a relationship between different states of affair at different moments of time, or perhaps at the same moment of time. And so if time had a beginning, then you can't cause time to exist.
You can't cause time to exist.
There has to be some other kind of relation.
Why can't you cause time to exist?
Because causation is a temporal thing. It's a relation between it's a relation between distinct space-time events, or perhaps between two different features of the same space-time event. But these are importantly things happening in space-time.
Things happening in space. Okay. So do you think space-time has a cause? So all right, all right. I understand now. You're bringing it together. Thank you. So you're saying space-time isn't contingent on anything.
I'm saying it doesn't. You don't want to use the word contingent there. I'm saying it doesn't even make sense to say that space-time has a cause.
Why not?
Because cause is a thing that happens within space-time, kind of by definition.
Okay. Okay. I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, 100%. Cause is something that happens in space-time. I guess I never really thought about it like that. Cause is something that happens in space. See, I'm flabbergasted by this, but it doesn't really, like, I don't know, it doesn't really affect my argument on God, though, in saying...
Okay, so what's the argument for God?
Well, I'm just saying that's, in my understanding of causation, it's something causes, like, something directly causes something. You can go into, how, like, specific you want to get into it, but eventually that would lead down to a first cause.
Well, not necessarily. Not if you have an infinite chain of causes.
But that's where I get to an infinite is illogical. Can't have an infinite amount of causes. Because for you to have an infinite, there would be no start.
That's what infinite means. That's what an infinite chain of causation would mean anyway.
And infinity is illogical. You can't have an infinite amount of anything.
Why is it illogical? How many numbers are there?
That numbers are just... I guess I agree with you. Numbers, yeah, you can have an infinite amount of numbers, but I'm talking about contingent things. You can have all right, sorry.
Okay, how many moments are there between today and yesterday? How many moments were there?
What? How many moments were there between today and yesterday? I mean, what do you measure a moment as?
An instant of time.
An instant of time. Okay. How long? What? I'm not following that one.
There's an infinite number of instants between today and yesterday.
You can measure an instant as what? 24 seconds.
No, an instant is 0 seconds.
Oh, yeah, you're right. My bad.
How many distinct moments are there between yesterday and today? Well, there's an infinite number of distinct moments.
No, because yesterday starts at a certain time.
Yeah, right. And how many... So each moment has 0 length. How many distinct moments are there?
0 length. So this is just like the hand clapping paradox? Like you can keep getting closer and closer and closer?
It's similar.
I don't know. I don't think. I guess infinite. I guess yeah. Okay. An instance. Yeah. All right.
Do you think the Big Bang happened?
Big Bang. I mean, yeah, I guess.
Well, then you do believe in infinities because the Big Bang was infinitely dense. If you think that it was a singularity.
I'm not very well refreshed on the Big Bang personally. I believe in science. I don't think that the world is 6,000 years old or whatever the fuck.
Good. That's fine. But my point is if you're pointing to the Big Bang as like the beginning of the universe, then you have no problem accepting infinities.
No, but I'm saying that something could have caused that. We can go down to like when I'm talking about my causations, they can go on forever. Why? Just keep on asking why. You will eventually,
and you'll always get an answer.
And you're saying you will always get an answer.
Yeah,
but I don't think that's true. I think eventually will come to a first one.
Yeah, but I haven't heard a good reason as to why one would expect that.
All right. I guess you could look at it as dominoes, right?
Yeah. Okay. Why can't you have an infinite chain of dominoes?
You can have technically. You could have an infinite chain of dominoes, but for the first domino,
there is no first domino if there's an infinite chain of dominoes.
And then they would never be knocked down because how do you?
What if they've always been knocking down?
How would you knock down an infinite amount of dominoes?
Look. So imagine that like you wake up and there is an infinite. There's like dominoes stretching off to the left and dominoes stretching off to the right, and like you can see off in the distance the dominoes about to come past you. Like they're falling over. They're about to come past you. And so what you do is you go and you go find somebody who's further to the left of you, and they've been awake for longer, and they say, oh yeah, the dominoes passed me 45 seconds ago. And then you go to the person further to the left of that, and they say, oh yeah, the dominoes passed me a minute and a half ago. And you just keep going left, and somebody will always say, there will always be a person, there will always be dominoes, and it'll be like, yeah, the dominoes passed me a billion years ago. Oh yeah, the dominoes passed me a trillion years ago. And there will always be someone further to the left. I don't see what the issue is. Could have just always been following. Or always been falling.
I would assume if we are assuming that these dominoes are contingent events in the universe, which you are going to say something about.
Yeah, I mean, like it's fine. Like, just grant for the sake of argument that like the dominoes falling are contingent, sure. That they
are contingent on one before it falling. Eventually, someone would have had to have tipped the first domino.
Unless there isn't a first domino, then they could have just always been falling.
But then none of them would have fallen.
No, they were all falling. They were always falling.
So they can't start falling.
Yeah, well, I mean, a single individual domino could have started falling, but yeah, there wouldn't have been a beginning to when the dominoes started falling. You're right.
I'm sorry, you like glitched at the very, very end of your sentence. I'm so sorry.
If it's the case that there is no start to the dominoes falling, and instead they've just always been falling, then it just follows that there is no beginning to the dominoes falling. It doesn't mean that the dominoes aren't falling. It just means that there's not a beginning to it.
I feel like logically, we're going in a circle here. Logically, I'm saying if it's contingent on something falling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something has to push.
Yeah, the thing that pushed it was the previous domino.
Okay. But you can't have an infinite amount of. But you're saying you can.
Yeah, I just don't see why not.
I'm saying someone would have to push the domino. I'm not saying it is the God who sent his son down to die on the cross or whatever. I'm saying.
But why do you think that someone must have pushed the domino?
I always just. I don't know. I just assume that you can't have an infinite amount of causes.
It just seems like an unjustified assumption.
But is it not as just unjustified as there can be an infinite amount? And then
look, I'm just saying that
agnosticism?
So my claim is that unless you can give me a reason why there can't be an infinite thing, I'm just going to assume it's possible. That's like a reasonable thing to do. Like if you unless you're going to prove to me that, like, I don't know, like unless you're going to show that it's genuinely impossible for, you know, a unicorn to exist, I'm going to assume that a unicorn can exist, that there's no like logical impossibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you have an argument for why it's like impossible for unicorns to exist, then yeah, sure, I'd love to hear it. But it sounds like you're just saying unicorns don't exist, and, you know, it's impossible for unicorns to exist. And I'm just like, well, but like, where's, like, how do you know? Like, can you prove that it's impossible? Or is it just kind of like, you just don't see any unicorns, therefore, like, it's, you know, you don't think that unicorns exist?
What?
Look, so your argument is basically like you don't see a whole lot of infinities, and like the infinity stuff doesn't really make sense to you, so like you don't think infinities can exist. And all I'm saying is like, look, unless you can give me a reason, like a good justification for why I should think infinities are impossible, I'm just going to continue to believe that they're possible. In the same way that unless you give me some reason or some, you know, compelling reason as to why I should think unicorns are impossible, I'm just going to keep thinking that unicorns are possible, that they could possibly exist.
That's 100% valid. You're right. You got me. I mean, I don't know.
Anything else, Rumble, that you want to talk about?
Nah, bro, you got it. Thank you. I'm new to this theological thing, by the way, and also I realized I might have been shouting. That's my bad.
No, you're good. Your audio was as fine as it was going to be.
All right, my bad. Sorry. But yeah, I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks
very
for
much.
being here, Rumble.
Sorry for
You're
if
fine.
it was a little
You're fine, Rebel. You're good.
Messy.
I appreciate that you're actually like interested in like trying to figure out and make sense of these things. So
Yeah,
I appreciate that like, you know, you're not just like doubling down and be like, no, like, you know, I'm like, you don't have to change your mind, but like you're at least seem like you're interested in thinking about things. I appreciate that about you.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, like, I used to be an atheist, like, 100%, and then, like, it was so stupid, I don't understand it. And then I kind of, with a whole political thing of, like, rabbit holes and echo chambers, I was like, okay, I want to make sure, like, I get some other information in. And so I did some digging, and I, you know, that's where I landed. But I'm still doing the digging, you know, I'm 19, I'm not that old.
Keep
I don't
digging.
really understand much.
Keep digging, man.
Thank you for the conversation, dude.
Yeah, thanks. Take care.
Yeah, peace.
That was super good faith. I love me a good faith fellow. All right, let's talk to Jordan. Oh, I have some super chats before I do that. Sorry. So we have five euros from Duke. He had us in the first half with the degree value argument, but the chat, the chatter. True. Yeah, the chatterbait comeback was savage. I appreciate that. At least somebody got it. Pokey sends $2. Disappointing in you platforming PMARs. Do better. I mean, like, look, to be clear, if he started throwing like homophobic slurs or whatever, like I definitely would kick him off. But like he was just arguing for God, so I don't think that he's like unplatformable. I think he's just like a shitty person. But like that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that like we should like not ever. I don't know, the whole blacklisting thing. Like I don't think that he's on the. He's not like a Nazi, right? Like he's not. I don't know. Well, maybe he is. Maybe I just don't know. But the new Corey sends 2 CHF, which I don't know what it is. Oh, those are Swiss francs. Okay, cool. I don't know why it's CHF, but thank you for the 2 Swiss francs. If God not real, how you explain bulldog cheese noodle? True. Absolutely true. And Duke sends another 2 euros. And yes, we must 100% shame stupidity. It kills. It does. That's true. Now, Carissa sent 10 gifted Dr. Blitz Debunks gift memberships. Now, that means that those 10 people have absolutely new powers. They can now send emojis, custom emojis that have been made recently, and they have access to the debate notes. So if you want access to the debate notes, if you want access to the custom emojis on YouTube, on either channel, you got to become a member. DeLeontari sends $2 to say PMARS was not in CT chat, he was streaming. Oh, YouTube chat, that I think is what's meant there. Felicia, by nature, sends $5 to say, thank you, Felicia, by the way. Felicia? Theists get confused and think either reality has to be forever or God, but there's no rule that says reality has to exist forever. Yeah, that's roughly it. Brian, thank you for the $5, Brian. Why do theists always argue that the idea of something infinite doesn't make sense, but they believe in an infinite being? Help. Yeah, and look, if they believe that the Big Bang is true, then they absolutely believe that there are infinite things. The singularity is infinite, kind of by definition. And then Gretchen sends $10. Thank you so much, Gretchen. Gretchen is a longtime supporter, and I appreciate that. By the way, I'm going to try to set up the special emojis on TikTok, too. I just need to get around to that. Gretchen says, falling dominoes, falling dominoes, falling dominoes, follows of dominoes falling, follows, infinitely falling dominoes, infinitely falling dominoes. Does that make sense? Kind of rushed it. Yeah, that's rough. And Garba Gaiman with the 5 Canuck bucks, thank you so much. I like this way of tackling the infinite regress. Just point out that they're assuming a start. The sniper analogy, Hilbert's Hotel. Yeah, look, I mean, they always do. Just don't assume a start. And then what's the issue? All right. Now, before I do anything, I want to see if I can add... Let me check something really quick. Before we Christian, thanks for the $2, the $2.70. Fan stickers. Hold on, I can add the stickers on YouTube. So if you become a YouTube subscriber or a TikTok subscriber, I can add those here too. So I'm gonna add them all right now. It might take a minute because they'll be under review, but just give me 30 seconds and I'll just add them all on TikTok really quick. I think I can only add them during live streams, and that's the annoying thing. So that's why it's going to take just a second. Come on, one more. Okay, I don't know why that's not all of them, but they're under review, so TikTok, you guys should get them soon. All right, let's bring up another guest. Shay is a double member. Based. Gretchen, that was worth the $10. I appreciate it. All right, let's talk to Jordan. 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 Have we spoken before?
Yes, 2 times.
Then I'm going to kick you off. I'm sorry, Jordan.
Oh, I would run too. I get it. It's fine.
It's not running. It's just people prefer new conversations. That's all. I don't even need to. It's not necessary. Now, I don't know how to say your name, Hand-I-At, but Hand-I-At, oops. Do you believe in God?
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
I can. I'm going to call you Hand. Is that okay?
It's Leah.
Leah. Okay, I will call you Leah. Great. Oh, it's like a hand that looks like an L, and then the I. I get it. I get it. All right, Leah. So, do you believe in God, Leah?
I believe that you have to. I'll explain.
That you have to
As a
believe in God.
society, yeah.
So, just to be clear, do you believe that a God
as a
actually
society-
exists? Do you believe that a God actually exists, or do you believe that, like, you know, societies have to believe in God even if God isn't real?
Yes, I believe that even if God isn't real, we have to believe that God exists.
Okay, but that's not the conversation to have, because I'm interested in believing what's true, right?
Okay, then I think I misunderstood. Sorry.
Okay, thanks for being here. I think I've spoken with Sheikh Harris Ghaffur before. So, you know, try to keep things novel. That's what we try to do. Mark, how's it going?
Hey, Dr. Blitz, how are you? First, I would like to say I appreciate your content. I appreciate you spending your time with us and debating people.
I appreciate
Truly,
that. I appreciate your appreciation. Now shut up and give me an argument. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, so now the question is if I believe in God, right?
Yep.
So I don't, mainly because of one thing. I've been raised in a religious community, right? And I've been raised as a Christian, but then while I slowly grew up, I figured that most of the people in most religious communities aren't religious themselves. They don't really follow the religion.
Look, Mark, if you don't believe in God, then are you going to convince me to believe in your God if you don't have one?
No, but I wanted to hear your reasons on why you do not believe in a God, because I
find the arguments against a God more compelling than the arguments for a God. That's what it boils down to.
Some of the arguments, and then also another thing, because of this belief, it's kind of rough because for me as a person, because right now I'm 17, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
oh, you can't be here for 17. I'm sorry, Mark. You have to be 18 plus on TikTok. Sorry about that. Ruby, how's it going?
Oh, hello. Hi.
Welcome.
Oh,
Do you
goodness.
believe in God,
Sorry,
Ruby?
it's my first time. To a certain
Don't worry, I'll be
extent,
gentle.
actually. Wonderful. This is actually something that I've been wondering about for a very long time, as I was raised in a very Catholic household and the like, right? And so I've been sort of wondering this very idea for a very long time because I was raised in a Catholic.
Ruby, do you believe in God?
household. That's something that I actually want to have your help with. I want an idea of I want another atheist's help with figuring this out, right? Because
I don't know. Why is the audio so bad right now?
can you hear me okay?
No, unfortunately.
Oh.
Let me try something. Try talking. Okay, so it's not that. It's something with the app that we're using, and I don't know why. I'll have to talk to somebody about it, but currently it's not working. But look, if you're not a theist, then this isn't the place. But if you keep listening, then you'll hear some good arguments. I think I'm just going to bring up people. I need to talk to probably Justin to see if I can get this working. I don't know why it keeps happening. All right, but we have some quick super chats to read. So from the One Corrupted, thank you for the $5, man. I saw your short on geometrically representing infinite space, and I found it interesting enough to remember only approximately. Hey, well, I'm glad that you remember it only approximately. It's a good topic, and I use it all the time. It's called conformal compactification. So, yeah, it's a cool topic. And Christian, with the 7 Canuck bucks, what's the definition of infinity in the context that you're using it? I understand infinity as all variables within a given group or set. So infinity, as typically understood, is that you have a set that has a cardinality, which is the number of elements in the set, that is larger than any finite cardinality. That's it. That's all infinity means. All right, let's bring up a guest. Let's bring up Mima Ludak.
Hello.
Mima, how's it going?
Hi. Sorry for my European accent, but I have a
It's
solid
fine, I'm
idea,
used to it.
okay? All right. So now this is from a perspective of science argument, right?
Okay, so to be clear, you do believe in God?
Yes. Actually,
Okay.
yes.
Go ahead.
So look, let's just for a moment ignore the Bible and the every religion, like every possible religion. Just focus on the thing I'm about to say. Okay. So you are familiar with Kardashian scale, right? The type civilizations, type 0, type 1.
Oh, yes,
type.
sure.
So my argument is, let's imagine a type 6 civilization, right? So a type 6 civilization, right? She's the civilization is
Wait a minute,
available
hold on. Mima Ludak,
Yep.
I'm getting informed that you do not believe in God.
No, I believe.
Really?
Just let me
promise?
let me finish. Okay, can I?
Do you promise? Do you promise on pain of eternal torment and banning from my live stream?
Yep. I'm not the person to lie.
Oh.
Just hear me out.
Okay, maybe you do believe in God, but why is your account rage bait?
Just for fun. I mean, you just say it for rage bait for fun.
Okay,
look,
fine.
Look, I think look, let's say this type 6 civilization, right? It's capable of creating new universes, right? So is 13.8 billion years enough to create a type 6, 7, or 8 civilization, right? We go into the science fiction.
To be clear, I don't think that those things exist.
Type civilization. So you don't believe in Kardashian scale, right?
I don't.
So you're saying
no, I don't. I don't think it's possible to like this is like not. This is like essentially speculation in sci-fi. I think it's in principle possible to be like type 2, if you will. I don't think anything else is like even in principle possible.
It's not possible to reach type. It's just common sense, right?
No,
Sorry,
it's not just common sense. This is not like something that's like obviously possible.
Why? Let's say we use
because there's a speed of light limit,
energy,
right?
Planet energy is a type 1 civilization.
I'm sorry. Type 3. Type 3 is at least like seems like it could happen. I don't think that it's even in principle possible to be like more than that. Like I suspect that that's not possible at all.
Yeah, but can you just you cannot imagine a type 4 or type 5 civilization. So
I don't.
You're saying
I don't even know what they mean. Right? I don't even know what they mean. Like they're not defined.
No. I'm defined. So let's say type 1. I'm just gonna explain Kardashian scale for people who don't know. Type 1 civilization is a civilization who uses energy of our planet. We are not. Carl Sagan also said we are type 0.79, maybe now 0.8, right? So type 1 uses all the energies from the home planet, right? So type 2 uses energy from the sun, right? And type 3 uses from the energy from the whole galaxy, right? So every possible star in the universe, right? So she's
in the galaxy.
In the galaxy, right? Or say, and we go further beyond, right?
I don't think that you can. The universe is too big.
You think, so you think type 3 civilization with that technology to let's say to use the energy of the sun of the other star is not available to you to go let's say
No, I don't think that you
So-
can go faster than light.
Yeah,
and
yeah. And it is not
going
kind of-
between
right.
galaxies would require that.
Right. So let's say there is a not say time travel, but let's say there is a possibility, right, to somewhat teleport. Oh,
I don't think that's physically possible.
Yeah, but it's not possible for Type 1 civilization.
No, I don't think
So
it's
type-
physically possible.
Yeah, Type 3 civilization could.
No, I don't
right?
think it's physically possible.
Yeah, it's not physical. Yeah, I understand, but let's say you heard about Dyson spheres, right? You
Yeah,
know
they're not
Dyson,
physically possible either.
Dyson spheres.
Yeah.
So you are counter-arguing Carl Sagan or Michio Kaku or Neil
Yeah,
deGrasse
well,
Tyson.
so
you're saying
like
you
most
are-
serious physicists don't think that Dyson spheres are physically possible. Rather, they think that Dyson swarms are probably what most people would do.
Yeah, that's
most
right,
species would do.
So let's say that's the one. Okay, yeah. You're okay. All right, I get you. So let's say a Type 3 civilization, right? You believe it's possible to reach Type 3.
It's in principle possible, yeah. Like over millions of years in principle.
Yeah. Let's say some amount of years, right? So you say it's not possible to reach Type 4 civilization, for instance.
I don't even know what Type 4 is supposed to
believe
mean.
in theory, right? You
What
believe
is
as
Type
a
4
science.
supposed to be?
But let's say okay. So we're going to the philosophy
Because like
level.
the
now.
Kardashev scale only has 3 types, right?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, but look,
So I don't even know what a Type 4 civilization is supposed to be according to
yeah,
the Kardashev
Kardashev scale. You just Google Kardashev scale. Kardashev scale is from 1970 something.
Yeah, and it only goes up to Type 3.
Yeah. This goes to Type 3, but later astrophysicists, right? Later
So it's
on,
not the Kardashev scale that we're doing.
no, it's Kardashev scales with some extra steps, right?
So what is a Type 4 civilization supposed to be able to do?
Okay, so that's the. What do you think? What would be Type 4 civilization for you? What do you
Presumably the
think?
whole universe, and I don't think that's physically possible.
Right. So let's go even further beyond. What is
No,
Type 5?
it doesn't make sense. I don't even think Type 4 is
It
possible.
doesn't. It does, yeah. But just for a second, it does not make. 100 years ago, I mean, people with fever thought that there is a devil in there, right?
No,
So it doesn't make sense for
I'm
you
not making.
to
I'm not making a claim about like, oh, I don't understand how. I'm saying I don't think it's physically possible.
Yeah.
I think that you would have to violate the laws of physics in order for it to be true. In order for it to be
Yeah,
possible.
true. But Type 3 civilization already can violate the current laws in our
No,
universe,
Type
right?
3
Do you believe-
civilizations don't have to
do you
violate
think-
any laws of physics in order to exist.
No. Let's say okay. So let's go a step back. So what is gravity for you? Gravity for you is what?
The
What do
curvature
you-
of space-time.
No, just say me. What do you think the gravity for you is? What is
Are
gravity?
we getting to God, by the way?
No. We are going. My point is like if
Your point
we
is a Type
reach-
6 civilization is a god, but it's still not because it's still people.
No. Not saying we are God. Like saying just imagine for a second, right? For a second, there is a Type 6 civilization. Not in our
No,
universe.
I'm
Let's say-
sorry. I'm actually good. I'm actually good on that conversation. It was going nowhere. Like, Jonathan. Jonathan?
Hi, how are you doing? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Do you believe in a god, Jonathan?
Yeah.
Okay, and which one would that be?
Well, I'm a Christian. I was raised a Christian.
Okay, cool. What would be like the most compelling argument you could give me, someone who's, an atheist, that would, perhaps bring me closer to that?
Me closer like to being a Christian or closer to
Yeah.
believing in God?
Closer to being a Christian.
Well,
And
being
maybe
raised a
if
Christian-
that means closer to believing in God, then maybe you have to start there, but
Well, I mean, me personally, I think like before establishing which religion is true, I think we would start by establishing if there is a God.
okay. So what would be the argument that you'd use to get me there?
So I would like, well, my personal opinion is that I don't think the universe and everything there is just happen to be. I do believe there's intelligent design behind it, and then if there's intelligent design, there should be like a intelligent designer. That's my
Okay,
my
so look, so I don't think that there is intelligent design. Like I don't share that intuition with you. If I did, I'd probably be a believer. So like why should I believe that there is intelligent design?
What do you mean you don't believe in it? Like when you look at life and like
let's say like human beings, for example. I find human beings very fascinating, like the
Yeah,
human
human beings are
brain,
fascinating. I agree.
organs, and everything else around it, and how we like as humans we're able to have every materials on Earth to create whatever we want and evolve and build civilizations. I see us as being intelligent beings.
Well, we're intelligent. I agree. Well, some of us are. Not all of us, but I would say that a lot of us are intelligent.
Yeah, most of us are, because that's why we got so far in life in terms of like civilization. So seeing us being this intelligent to the point where we invent technology and everything that we have right now in our time, that to me could be used as evident that whatever created us or everything else is like an intelligent designer.
So, I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Well, to that alone, looking at us human beings, that would mean to me personally that whatever created us is an intelligent designer. We didn't just happen to be here.
I mean, but if you think that humans evolved, which is where the scientific consensus lands, then it seems like you'd be totally reasonable to say that no, actually, it doesn't require intelligence to make us because we evolved. And evolution is not an intelligent designer. He was too stunned to speak.
No, sorry. I'm just thinking.
No, you're good.
Well, regarding evolution, my opinion on that is that's me personally, but when I look at where we are right now, I find it so it seems to be too much of a coincidence that we just evolved to being intelligent beings.
I don't follow.
I'm not a scientist, or I'm not.
What do you mean by it's too much of a coincidence?
I see it as too much of a coincidence that we just happen to evolve into intelligent beings.
How is that a coincidence? I mean, look, if intelligence is useful for our survival, then it's at least a possible way that humans could have evolved to be more likely to survive.
Yeah, but how is it that we just... Let me just think on how to better phrase this. Do we have a time slot for each participant, or do I have a couple minutes?
You have some time to think, but you do have to, but if after everything I say it's 30 to 60 seconds of silence, I will probably get bored.
Okay, I understand.
So, make of that what you will.
So what I think personally about evolution is that why I think it's highly unlikely that we just happen to evolve into intelligent beings is just how is it that it seems like it followed a pattern of because we needed to be, we became.
Well, we didn't need to, but it was, look, so did whales, so whales evolved from land, from things that are hippopotamuses, kind of hippo related things. Did they need to go into the water? No, but going into the water probably made them more likely to survive.
So yeah, because they went into the water, they adapted and they evolved into...
No, what I mean is, so you're getting it backwards. What I mean is did the hippo things need to evolve to be completely aquatic? No, they could have been semi-aquatic like hippopotamuses are. They didn't need to be fully aquatic, but being fully aquatic was beneficial. They would survive better, more effectively if they were fully aquatic. And so evolution basically takes all possible paths, and the ones that work out well are the ones that end up propagating.
Yeah, well, that's my point, because it seems that, how can I say it? It seems to be convenient for every life form. So
evolution.
For me,
so the things that are alive are the things that were successful.
Yeah, but that to me seems like a coincidence. Every single life form we have right now
How is that a coincidence? That's what evolution predicts.
But what determines that, though?
What determines what? Whether something's successful?
Become like an intelligent life. Like, let's talk about, like, let's say human beings.
So look, intelligence is a feature that an organism can have that makes it better able to solve problems, right?
Yeah.
And so if you have, it's especially, by the way, better able to solve social problems. And so if you have a social species, like ants are social species, dolphins are social species, you know, a lot of mammals are social species, like think like, you know, chimpanzees, they live in communities, anything that lives in like a large family group, elephants. If you have more intelligence, then your community, your small society is more likely to be successful, because it means that you can, you know, cooperate better to like hunt. You can let each other know more effectively if something is coming. You can predict what's going to happen in the future and then use that to make plans, large scale plans, more efficiently. So like, it's just not so surprising that you would expect evolution to, or intelligence to evolve, given that we already expected mammals to be, not even just mammals, many animals to be social.
Yeah, but my question for that is, don't you find it pretty like convenient that everything seems to be perfectly in place for life to evolve?
It's not. I mean, there are a lot of places where it is very not suitable for life to exist.
Yeah, but like, let's say Earth, for example.
Yeah, so Earth is one of the few places where it is suitable for life.
Yeah, and therefore, like, don't you find it pretty coincidental that not only that we have this planet to host life, but that life just happened to follow like the evolutionary like pattern to become.
So once
what
you
we are
have
today?
life will always follow an evolutionary pattern, right? That's just a feature of life. Life evolves. That's just what life does.
Yeah, but what decided that though?
It's just a statistical law. Things that are more effective at reproducing will outcompete things that are less effective at reproducing. That's always true, regardless of where the life is.
But what decided that?
That's not a thing that needs to be decided. It's like a trivial fact that if something is better at reproducing, there will be more of them than something that is less good at reproducing.
So don't you think that it's kind of like programmed to be this way?
No, this is just a fact of like probabilities. There's no programming required here. This is like trivially true.
Yeah, I understand what you're trying to say, but what I'm trying to say is that don't you think since it's a fact that what you said about life, like life forms, anything that can, you know, don't you think it seems to have been designed that way instead of just happening?
Where is the design necessary?
Well, the fact that it could evolve and become something
once
more.
Once life exists, evolution must happen. This isn't like something that requires an agent to kickstart. Evolution is just a fact. It's a feature of life. That is just what life does. Anytime you have anything that can reproduce and consumes resources in an environment where there's not an infinite amount of resources, you will have competition because you have more than one organism competing over the same resources, and the ones that are more efficient at collecting the resources or fighting off the other competition or whatever it might be, whichever one is better is going to be successful, and that's all evolution is.
Yeah, but how is it is how it came to be that way though, in your opinion?
Use your brain. That's just a thing that happens when you have finite resources and reproduction.
Okay, let's just say that somebody who doesn't have your education, would you explain that that's just how life is to that person?
I would say what I just said. If you have two things that are fighting over the same resources, whichever one is better at fighting is going to be the one that gets the resources.
Yeah, but how is it that it just happened to be this way? Nothing like created
Which part requires explaining?
Like life, for example, you said that life is always gonna be this way, right?
Yes, it is a fact that if you have two things that are competing for the same resources,
yeah,
if those things are life, so be it. They could be robots or whatever. Whichever one of the two things is better at fighting for the resource, that will be the one that gets the resource. Because it's better at getting it.
So, in your opinion, as an atheist, this just a random like thing that happened to be.
It's not random. Is there a part of the thing that I explained that sounds random to you?
I mean, when I look at it this way, it seems to me that this is an intelligent thing that just evolves within an environment. No.
No, there's no evolution required for this. Like, evolution is the thing that happens as a result of things competing over resources.
Yeah.
There's no intelligence required for that to happen.
What do you mean?
Look, are you a big dude?
What do you mean, big dude?
Like, you're muscular.
Not really. Why?
Okay, so if I put you, let's say that you're hungry, right? You're starving even, and then I put, like, I don't know, Mike Tyson, also starving. I put you guys both in the same room. You're both locked in the room, and you only get out once the food is eaten, and there's a single apple in the middle of the room. Who's gonna get the apple?
Probably Mike Tyson, if we're talking about like physical strength and whatever.
Yeah, you're both starving. You both want the apple. One of you is going to get out of the room. The other one probably not. Mike Tyson is going to get out of the room. He's going to get the apple, right?
But don't you think I have a chance to like outsmarting him, or I don't know, tricking him into, making it out of the room?
All else look. All else being equal. Okay, fine. Let's change the story. Let's say that there is I set up a competition, and whoever wins the arm wrestling contest, they're the one that gets to eat the food, right?
Okay.
And the other one starves to death. Who's winning? You or Mike Tyson?
Mike Tyson.
Okay. So there wasn't any design there. It wasn't. There wasn't anything required. There wasn't any intelligence required to explain why Mike Tyson wins. The reason Mike Tyson wins is because he's better at the contest.
Yeah, but there's like I would say there's stuff before that led to Mike Tyson winning. Wouldn't you say?
So if you have two different things, then they're going to be different in at least one way, right? In this case, you and Mike Tyson are different because Mike Tyson is an enormous hulk of a man who's wildly strong.
He works out and he trains.
Yeah. And so whichever one had the inclination to train more was the one that was going to win. The point is if there's a difference, that difference can possibly contribute to which one is more successful in such a competition. And whichever one is more successful is going to be the one that gets the resources. And it's going to be the one that, continues to propagate its genes and all sorts of those kinds of things.
That I understand, but what I don't understand, me personally, is how is it that it seems to me that life itself intelligently evolve, because how can you just evolve towards and adapt to your environment years after years, decades after decades, millions of years after millions of years, if it's not intelligent?
Where is the intelligence required? Like what part of the evolutionary process requires intelligence?
I mean, if you adapt to your environment and develop features to keep going, doesn't that mean you're intelligent? Like you intelligently?
No, it just means that you have a drive to survive.
Where's that drive coming from?
Because the ones that didn't have a drive to survive died.
Yeah, but put aside the ones that didn't, but
No, look, okay, so suppose I flip a coin. If I get heads, you get a drive to survive. If I get tails, you don't get a drive to survive. Suppose this is you're a little bacteria, and there's a gene, and if the gene is if you get the good gene, then you get the drive to survive. If you get the bad gene, you don't have the drive to survive. And every time you split, there's going to be a 50-50 chance that you get the good gene that gives you the drive to survive, and a 50-50 chance or a 50% chance that you get the bad gene that doesn't give you the drive to survive. If I then asked 10 years later, which are the bacteria that existed, are any of them going to be the ones that exist that don't have the drive to survive?
Because it was just a fluke.
Where's the fluke?
I mean, if you're talking about flipping a coin,
Yeah.
this is just like it's just chances.
Well, yeah, except if you flip a million coins, then the odds of getting at least one that's heads up is going to be basically 100%.
Sure.
And, you know, bacteria, like there's a lot of life, right? So there's a lot of chances.
But like, don't you think that, let's say we've come like really far. If we talk about evolution, we've come really far as like as a life form. Don't you think that evolution itself and to the way we are now shows that we are intelligent? Because, well, I mean, it's life.
We
itself
are intelligent, at least
but
most
life
of us.
itself is life itself is an intelligent design.
I don't see how that follows.
I mean, how can you evolve into an intelligent human being if life itself is not like an intelligent life form?
I don't understand why. Like, you're asking a question. I don't understand. The underlying assumption of the question is that it requires intelligence in order for intelligence to evolve. I don't understand why you're assuming that.
I mean, isn't it like I mean, to me, it's obvious. To evolve into an intelligent human being after millions of years.
Do you think that it takes intelligence in order to evolve to have a bigger brain?
To have a bigger brain?
Yeah.
So like a normal human being, like...
No, like imagine that you're like an ape. You're like a primate thing, like a primate 10 million years ago. Does it take intelligence in order for a bigger brain to be beneficial?
I mean, some form of intelligence would, if you...
Why does it take intelligence for it to be the case that having a bigger brain would be beneficial?
I mean, wouldn't that depend on the environment you're in? If your brain needs to develop...
Of course it would. So maybe the environment would be, well, it's not just the environment. It could also depend on the other animals that are around. It could also depend on things like sexual selection and so on. But suppose for a moment that it was beneficial for whatever situation the primate was in to have a bigger brain. Does it require intelligence for it to then develop a bigger brain over time?
To me, yeah, because it's just
what
life.
Part,
just
what part requires intelligence?
Well, I mean, I would say like life itself seems to be programmed to evolve, no matter the environment.
We've been over this before. It doesn't require programming in order for evolution to happen.
But how is it that a life form put in an environment evolves and adapts to that environment if it's not like...
So you're familiar with like mutations, right? Like genetic mutations?
Not really.
So genetic mutations are basically spontaneous and essentially random changes in the genetic code of an organism. Okay. And this can happen over generations, but like given a you know, imagine that you're like a giraffe or something. And you know, you're a pregnant giraffe. It's possible, it's perhaps not so likely, but it's possible that the giraffe that you give birth to has a slight mutation, is slightly different. Maybe it's slightly taller, maybe it's slightly shorter, maybe it has, you know, one extra vertebrae in the neck or something like this. Mm-hmm. And so those mutations can provide the seed for evolution to act upon, or for natural selection to act upon. Once you have, because that allows for things to be different. Mutations allow for organisms to be different from one another. And once you have difference, now you just have, well, whichever one is different in the way that is more beneficial, that's the thing that will succeed more likely. That's the thing that will be more likely to succeed, rather.
And what causes like those mutations?
Often it's like ultraviolet damage from the sun, or sometimes it's just like an incorrect copying of the genetic code during the reproductive process. Like, you know, like the cells, like the same way that like cancer happens as a result typically from a mutation in a cell, and it starts dividing rapidly. It's just a result of like some mistake taking place somewhere.
So like the environment affected the organism.
It could be the environment, or it could just be an internal mistake. Both happen.
Okay, I get it, but it's just, I don't know if it's, you know, I'm not coming here as an expert. I was raised a Christian, so like
that's fine.
A Christian worldview and like a godly worldview makes more sense to me, if that's the way my brain is wired. I don't, if you can say that. But to me, it seems that life itself, it's like it's been programmed to evolve no matter like the environment. That's what it seems to me. So therefore,
It's
that
programmed
to me,
so evolution is not something that needs to be programmed in.
so it just happens to evolve.
Yes. Evolution always happens. Evolution happens whenever there's difference amongst the organisms and competition over
Yeah, but
resources.
those are like causes, exterior causes, like external causes, right?
Yeah. That's what causes
So,
evolution
like,
to happen.
yeah, but let's say if something is not programmed to evolve, even if
There's
there's
no internal programming required for evolution to happen. Evolution happens when there's differences and when there's competition. Those two things are all that matter. You don't need
but
internal anything.
Okay, let's see. What if it didn't evolve this way?
Then you would have
Okay,
had something else.
Let me try to rephrase this. Sorry. To me, it seems that even if there are like external factors, like competition, like you mentioned, if the life form itself is not programmed or compatible, I would say it would not evolve regardless of like these external factors. No.
If there's competition between two organisms and those two organisms are different, then either they will be able to compete exactly the same because maybe the competition just doesn't care about what their difference is, or there will be a difference in how effectively they compete for the resources. If there is a difference, then the one that is more, if there's a difference in how effectively they compete, then the one that is more effective at competing is more likely to get the resources and hence pass down its difference to its future offspring.
Yeah.
And that's all evolution is.
Yeah, that I understand, but
so then what's the issue?
My issue with this is that what determines the how can I say this? Okay, let's say two life forms, you say they're different and there's competition. And the one that is more equipped, I would say, to get the resources needed is the one that's gonna survive and pass the genes to the future, like, well, the baby, if I would put it like in my language.
Yeah, that's fine.
So what gave that life form the ability to strive and survive over the other life form?
Random mutation.
Random mutation. So it's not, you don't think it's like intelligent design?
No.
So you don't think it was given like the ability to strive?
No.
So
and
life
we know
just...
random mutations happen all the time, right? That's what cancer is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, maybe I need to do more research on that, but to me it seems...
That's plausible. So Jonathan, I'm going to let you go because I have to end the live stream soon. But thank you so much for being here. And I would really heartily suggest that you go learn more about evolution because it's really not that like surprising of a thing, right? It's actually like super intuitive, but you got to have like the right language to understand it. So I would suggest like go take a look, do some reading, do some watching or whatever. And yeah, sound good?
What books would you suggest somebody read to learn?
You could read The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins.
Okay.
It's a pretty good book. All right, Jonathan, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Take care. So unfortunately, y'all, it is that time. It is 11:57, which means that we got to end the live here. We will be back tomorrow for some more debates, perhaps a different topic, but let's read some super chats before we end the live and make sure that I don't miss any cash apps or anything. So we have €5 from Duke of Shostka. Thank you, Duke. I appreciate you. Evolution be like, you don't need to be the best at running away from a bear. Just do good enough to outrun the last person. That's true. That's a good way of phrasing it. Now, do we have any... From Shay, we have $10. Paying for today's laughs, you're hilarious daily. I appreciate that, Shay. It's so kind of you. Now, just before I go, I want to remind you, and this is for TikTok and YouTube, if you guys become members on TikTok or YouTube. I would recommend it on YouTube, by the way, because there's more perks on YouTube than there are on TikTok. But if you guys become members or super fans or whatever it's called, whatever platform you're on, you get access to the special emojis, which only I think they're called super fans on TikTok and members on YouTube have access to. Also, if you're on YouTube, you get access to my debate notes, which I will show you really quick. It's these. Oh, let me hide that. It's these notes, which are perhaps quite handy. They have a whole bunch of arguments, counter-arguments, syllogisms, evidence papers for all sorts of topics, you know, flat earth topic, whatever. Flat earth, theism, young earth creationism, all of this stuff. So if you want access to those things, if you want access to the emojis, membership is your way to go. But until then, if you guys don't want that, that's cool too. Until then, until tomorrow, I will see you guys. Oh, wait, no, join the Discord. There's a Discord server, 18+, join the Discord. That's where you get announcements. All right, see you guys tomorrow.